We're here this afternoon with Gary and Christian. Hi, boys.
Hiya.
Hello. Hello.
It's going to be a very deep conversation and probably a very fast one.
Yeah.
With these boys who are mega intelligent.
Well, we've been chatting away for the last couple of days, folks, and it's a shame we never sort of like recorded a lot of stuff we were speaking about because we covered so many different subjects. Unfortunately, we had to think about your daughter. We didn't want to wake her up, did we? Because it was getting so loud downstairs, but because it was a late one. But no, the first time I've done one with Christian, and you know we're pretty much on the same page with most things, to be honest with you.
Yeah, more or less on par. Well, I wouldn't say we're like hyper intelligent. I think it's more of
Common sense,
experience, and wisdom.
Yeah, inner wisdom. Listen to our inner voice without being sort of like led by the mainstream narrative, which throws people off.
Yeah, well, it indoctrinates you to a certain degree that it keeps you on a certain vibrational level, and you stick there, and you don't evolve in any form whatsoever, mentally or physically. You know, all these people that watch TV day in, day out, they never do anything else but.
No, my whole time with Christian is all we do is talk, isn't it, Christian?
Yeah, more or less.
And then he gets on the phone and I go, hang on a minute, I've got to record it. But we are actually having a hangout because Gary wanted one with you today.
Yeah,
and
it's a beat. Unfortunately, this is my last one, so I'm going home tomorrow.
I know, Gary. It's like Gary moved in.
And it's almost like I moved in. I mean, I intended, Christian, to stay here till Wednesday or Thursday, and I sort of like where I live in my sheltered housing complex. I sent her a message saying that I'm staying here for another few days. I've had such a good time with, and a lot of the podcasts we've done
and he's helping me do something else at the moment.
And yeah,
aren't you as well?
And also
so,
I'm helping Karen out with other stuff as well. So it's like it's been good that I'm here, especially it's just a subject that I know pretty much about. I'm not going to go into too many details.
But what I thought we'd do is, because Christian, obviously, there's a few things you want to talk about, and there's a few things that Christian wants to talk about. So basically, I've copied the stuff on his Facebook, which I'll put the video on in a minute. But basically, just explain it, Christian, about the hieroglyphs.
Well, I mean, most of these are found around the world now. I mean, we had in Egypt, the destruction of archaeology not so long ago. By ISIL or ISIS, but we found that it was being done by variants.
Do you think these are that old, by the way?
Say again?
These hieroglyphs, do you think they're quite old?
Oh yes, I think they are. Probably 1,000 years, maybe a bit more. But there seems to be.
It's really crazy when we've been talking about those things around the sun, and then I put out. What's her name? The video. Jack Streaming.
Jack Streaming. Yeah.
And then she can see those things up there, and then basically they're talking about them on here. So they're probably how we work. It's how the system works.
I'm wondering, Christian, whether sort of like in connection with our sort of like consciousness, plus the right atmospheric conditions and frequency, you can see these things. That's why sometimes you can see them and other times you can't. You know, I mean, you can't look.
No, I don't think we see. I think they're there nearly all the time.
Yeah, but we can only see
our
them.
eyes don't see them, but the cameras for some reason.
Camera can see them.
Why would the camera? Christian, why would the camera pick it up?
Because the camera's got its own mechanism. It'll pick up what it sees, right? I mean, there's so many people in the past that have said that we only see a certain amount of perceived light, right? But if we're reacting on the right vibrational level, like Gary just said, yeah, we're in tune with the true reality that we live in.
Exactly.
You've got to remember that as kids, we are injected, right? Which changes our perception instantly. This is what I've said in the past about.
I'm a bit worried to look up in the sky now in case I see those things.
Well, you've got nothing to fear. You know.
I don't think they're coming near us, are they? They're doing whatever they're doing, and we've sort of wondered whether the sun is a black hole anyway, and they're going in and out through there. But yeah, we're just getting to the bit. We're just going through your hieroglyphs that you put on Facebook.
When Gina Maria Colville-Hill did that video herself, she's a researcher into this as well. And you think, well, hang on a minute, this is more or less what we saw, what I saw, what my friend saw, what you saw. So we're obviously operating on that vibrational level we're in tune with what's actually going on in today's society. We're distracted by TV. We're distracted by what's
Do you
going
know
on
what it makes
right
me
now
feel
with
like?
the media.
You know, like you said, we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but you said about the fact that we've been mined. It's like we're living in their minds.
Yeah, a huge mining operation.
I'll tell you what.
It's been going on forever. I mean, what
No, what I want to ask you about, Christian, because I'm not so up on like, I really, and some of my friends in the community want to hear your opinion on like on alchemy and sort of like how can gold, is gold just gold, and can it come from other materials throughout alchemy? Because there's sort of like, there's so many people that say it can, other people say it can't. What is your view on alchemy with turning other materials into gold or whatever?
Well, when you think about the way that I've come across, the way like your gold bladder, you got a golden heart, you know, where are these sayings coming from? They've been, you know, I heard it when I was a kid. So, you know, and you find out that words are reality, you know, and I mean, I'm talking about like your blood itself. It's like a plasma, yeah, if you like. And it's powerful. Plasma is powerful in various ways that you see in history. Like one of the things that they fear is a plasma hit. You know, when you look at the past and you hear that God turned everybody to stone or everything to stone, you know, this is what people reckon, that it's the plasma that caused it. Is it part of the solar storm? I don't know, you know, or a section of it. But when it comes to the blood and the heart, when you think about all the rituals that were done in the past in various places around the world, it's all more or less the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I need to look to study more on sort of like alchemy, but of course, like everything else in this world, that's all hidden, and you know, the elites have probably got hidden knowledge on alchemy that sort of like maybe it does go on. I mean, you know. They seem to have all the gold, don't they? If you remember, like you were saying the other day, it was a few years ago.
We're going to do sections. We're doing the
Oh,
hieroglyphs.
sorry, we're going off the
no, it's
going
okay.
off beaten track
It's
a little
okay.
bit, aren't we? Yeah, we can come back to that a bit later if you want, Christian. We're doing the hieroglyphs now.
It's going to move on. It's going to move on. I either start the hieroglyphs again or I just move on. Should we move on?
See, I mean, when you look at all these old things, and these engravings have been put onto really hard surfaces to make sure they last the test of time, you know, that they go through time and they don't get eradicated or erased or worn out quickly. So they've been purposely put onto these surfaces so that they stand the test of time to be found later on. So obviously there is something to it, and it pertains to the Greys, or it might even pertain to our creators who actually did create us to mine this place, to do the work for them. You know, like Zacharias Ditchin says. And I've just actually come across a post from Australia, and they've got like skeletons that look like Greys. So, you know.
Well, what about the elongated headed people?
Well, the Greys do have an elongated head. You know, and if that's a case that...
I mean, Marie Wheatley reckons that we were living with them, but in the end we killed them off.
Yeah, I think that's
we even married them and had children with them.
That's probably what caused the giantism. It's just a part that I feel is the reality of it. I mean, there's so much evidence that there was giants in the past, but were we giants originally? Who knows, you know, but there's giant footprints all over the world. The Tibetan monks, they worship these giant footprints. In some places, they're like 12, 14 feet long. So,
but your whole point was that with the hieroglyphs, because we're moving on sort of now in a moment, but it was the fact that we were talking about all this, and you then saw it in the hieroglyphs, which are over 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
Bit crazy, though, isn't it?
Sorry, Christian. Can I ask you one question before we move on? When you say Greys, do you consider these like extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or fallen angels, or?
I think I'm on a parallel with you. I think they can come into our world. I don't know whether it's cloaking or whether it's interdimensional, but I'd have to say that it could be both cloaking and interdimensional.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
You know, because me and Ashley saw, they just disappeared in the thin air. Now, I know they've got what you call Project Bluebeam, but I'm talking about on a day that was as clear. You know, I feel that they can use the cloud system, to manipulate the cloud wave frequency and scalar waves, because I've caught it in cameras and pictures that I've taken myself. But on a very clear day, with the sun being in a distance, and you think, well, these were like the opposite side, and you think, well, how would that be able to be projected to that sort of distance, even if you're talking high input of technology? And one of the crafts came to above the roof, I mean, right above the roof, and like stuck, like we were frozen in time.
Can I ask you a question there? Like, you know, I've done a show like about UFOs and one thing and other, about interdimensional beings and one thing and other, and PC Alan Godfrey, like in Todmorden and in Yorkshire, and he said if he'd have got out of his police con, I've got to remember these are very good witnesses because being a policeman, you know, you imagine what he went through going back to his station, like in Todmorden or wherever it was, saying like, oh, I just seen a UFO. But he said if he'd have got out of the car, went up, he'd have gone bang, bang, bang. He would have felt it. Although he didn't, he was probably petrified. But would you concur with that? Would you concur? It seems like they've manifested themselves actually into reality as a solid object or a hologram.
You don't hear them and you don't see them visually. Some people do, I suppose, can see them. But I took pictures. I didn't hear them, but they're on my pictures. Never heard.
Do you see where I'm coming from, Christian? Like, is it a manifestation of our reality from our brain, or is it like something you can sort of like go up and bang on the side?
Well, as you said that, right? I mean, it was Ashley that called me out because he saw them, right? And if it was my manifestation, then I wouldn't have seen what he
Exactly,
saw.
that's a good point. Yeah, because you both saw the same thing. It's not like on an individual basis, is it?
No, and he saw exactly what I saw. I mean, we didn't talk about it till afterwards. He saw 4 craft, I saw 4 craft, but we didn't say that at the time. So what we saw was for real. That's the way I can put it. And the very fact that it comes so close to all
Well, it is real because I've taken pictures of them. I've made videos about in 2016. They're somewhere on YouTube.
Is it
or
a
Facebook.
chance? Is it a chance they could be military vehicles or?
Well, it could be military, couldn't it? But then it's like are they mining the sun?
I don't think they're mining the sun. I think what the sun actually is the entry point of light, the energy point, if you like. What they talk about in string theory.
Can you just, because obviously you've done these little you put the pictures on Facebook. So it says NASA showed you the black triangle in the sun. Do you want to just explain why you wanted these, like why these pictures mean something to you then?
Well, when you look at the pictures NASA released, and it wasn't just NASA, there was various others that I saw as well, and it's like the sun's got a triangle on it where the light is being darkened on it. And yet that stone has got the very same symbol on it. And yet, what craft is it that so many people saw in Virginia or in places in America? A giant triangle. Triangle shape. And when you put the pieces together, you know, there's the connection, the similarity. There's no coincidence here. It's all connected one way or the other.
So do you think that all along it's been, you know, when they talk about the sun, that we're working off a simulator? The whole thing is a sun simulator.
Do you think this sun, as a lot of people a couple of years ago, Christian, was coming out saying like, our sun now isn't what it used to be, and there's some kind of simulator. Because I must admit, it does. I know you're similar age to me. I remember in the '60s, the sun just looked different, Karen. It don't look the same as what it does now. I can't say what it is. I mean, I'm colourblind, so it's hard for me to simulate colour. But yes, it does. Even to me, it looks a different colour. It looks different. It looks different. I can't explain it, Christian. I can't use a terminology to explain it, but it just looks different. That's the word I use, different.
What I want to know is what they did with the original sun. I mean, one of my friends says that the sun is shifted. Right now, you got upper helium and perihelium, where the sun is distant and the sun is close. So, are we at a solar minimum, and the sun is a tiny little spot, rather to what it used to be, and they're working off its energy with a solar reflector, which is to me, the most logical explanation and why they spent so many years keeping Britain more or less on the cloud, because
Yeah,
otherwise I bet it's
that's
not
right.
more cheap.
Because
That's right.
why do they keep us under cloud?
I mean, the thing is, you know what?
Because we'd notice it.
Well, if
But
you,
I did
sorry.
in 2016. I saw the discs up there.
Yeah. Well, another thing as well. If you look at some of the sort of like, I'm not going to say the word, but anti-globe maps. I'm not going to say that word because to get a strike. If you look at sort of like where we're situated compared to sort of like other countries that have absolutely brilliant summers, we should be getting brilliant summers. And I wonder sometimes whether they're sort of like weather manipulation machines stop working.
I told you about that, Gary. Remember, we're lying on our side.
Yeah.
Africa's lying on its side, so they're facing like east, say, and we're facing west. And all of Europe is above us, and that's why the sun has to go north.
Yeah.
Because the sun is going to Europe.
Because if you look at like a globe map, obviously, like, you know, they're nearer the equator. But if you look at
but the equator's up there.
Yeah. You think it's north rather than.
Yeah, I showed. What did I show you?
I know you did. You showed me.
You on the globe.
Yeah.
I showed you Africa is lying on its side because we're lying on our side. That puts all of Europe north.
But my point is, you know, sometimes we have some fantastic days where it's hot. It can be hotter here than sort of like Spain or Portugal.
Yeah.
But Spain or Portugal. But then another time you'll fly up in a plane like, and all you see is non-stop cloud. Like they've got like these cloud making machines that do exist because it was even on the Jeremy Clarkson Top Gear show once. So they do exist.
What I would say is, I remember 2019. We had like 2 days where the temperatures escalated so hot. It was so hot. I've even posted on Facebook and various other places that the bees were diving into a bird bath and committing suicide. They drowned themselves.
It was too hot for them. It was too hot for them.
That was in 2019 where the temperatures reached phenomenal heights. And I think, was that them testing their new solar reflector array?
Well, sometimes it feels like microwave because you look at the temperature or you find, and it'll say it's 20 degrees and you think, oh, it feels like nearly 30. It's just much hotter than they're saying.
Well, I'll tell you.
The very fact that I picked up the scalar waves in my photographs say that there was energy being used. That I'd been taking photos of the sun for more or less a decade. And this had never happened. So when I came across the scalar waves in the air, wherever you looked, you know, my photos prove it, that it was something that was causing it that was never there before. So when you put the pieces together, I'm sure the sun's still out there. It's like all them years that they were spraying. I mean, I couldn't believe how constantly we were always under cover over the blanket.
But you don't know whether, I told you we could have the 4 rivers behind us. It's not above us, is it? Because in their world it's above, but it's wherever it is, it's above us. And they could be coming through and they have to mask us out in case we keep seeing them coming.
Well, I was watching one of Martin's shows this morning, right, Christian, and he was looking at some sort of like ancient sort of like hieroglyphs and photographs and one thing or another, and it seems to be a high absence of clouds, and it seems like some of the ones he did look at, it looked like they was actually been painted in afterwards. So it is sort of like having such a big cloud cover a relatively new thing, like in the last couple of 100 years. And there was a time when there wasn't this much cloud anyway. It's all just weather manipulation.
It's 19 degrees here, but cloudy.
So my point is,
it's always cloudy.
It's just manipulated weather. And not true. I mean, I'll give you a little example.
Why did you know that we're in the middle of everything and they've covered us up with clouds? So obviously something's happening above our heads.
I'll tell you something. I picked up on something this time last year, Christian. I do like sunbathing, like, you know, and all through the lockdown where I live, there's a golf course nearby, so I used to go sunbathing every day. I found a little copse, and I thought no one's going to see me, and I couldn't be more socially distanced if I tried. And every day from before Easter, it was absolutely red hot. Of course, no one was allowed to get out and get any vitamin D. This year, when the lockdown was lifted, it got cloudy again. You see where I'm coming from? So it's like in the space of one year, it changed exponentially.
Well, stay in the houses because we've turned the sun simulator
And of course, another thing as well, they didn't want people to go out and get vitamin D to make themselves healthy. And it seems like too much of a coincidence this year. Apart from the odd day here and there, it's been pretty much rubbish when people are allowed to go out. See where I'm coming from? It's like it was deliberately set that way. Like last year, you couldn't go out. Oh, we can turn off the cloud machines now. You know, save a bit of money.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, when you put it all together, like when it started, the first 2 weeks of April, we had no spraying. There was no spraying whatsoever, and everybody was told to stay indoors, sort of thing. And it is quite weird the way they portrayed it out on the media and whatnot. You put all the pieces together, you begin to make, two and two make four in my book. But yeah, when I go back through all my own research, because I was getting up at like the crack of dawn just to catch the sun, and in places you could still catch the golden glow.
Somebody told me that the black dot in the sun like that is to do with the camera in whatever you're using that does that, whether you believe that or not.
Well, the original sun, because I've been what you call a sun gazer for a good part of a decade, and the one thing I can tell you that all the time that I've been sun gazing, the minute you look at the sun, you'll get like a black spot appear, with yourself, when you're looking at the sun yourself, and it'll disappear, and then you'll soak up the sun's energy. We were always told, don't look at the sun, it will send you mad. Well, hang a minute, I'm staying my ground here, right? Now what we've got, it's not a golden sun, it's a white sun, or a white light. I'll call it a white light, but I've caught this white light being a diamond shape, I've caught it being a square, and I've caught the reflections on walls and windows and cars, just like other people have. That tells you, whatever that is, it's not a round sun. And I've seen the sun myself through telescope,
well, it's a black dot, isn't it, really? Well, black disc, little black disc.
It's a power source. To me, I think it's the power source.
Like a generator, kind of thing.
Yeah, that gives us the heat. And listening to Sting's song the other day, it kind of makes sense what he sings in the song as well. There's a little black spot on the sun today. And we're worried about this black spot. And it's a camera fault. No, it's not a camera fault.
And what about these people that say like the sun's the cathode, the anode, or something like that? So basically, it's part of a
positive and negative,
positive and negative light, and then in between light that the everything else acts as some kind of capacitor that sort of like stores up the energy. Like I mean, I know when the other day when we went out and we was feeling them trees, they feel warm to the touch. It's like they was sort of like getting electromagnetic energy. Because we was doing a bit of tree hugging the other day. It's very strange because it was in complete sort of like shaded area, wasn't it? And it was fantastic because it's just there's a discovery centre not far from where Karen lives, and it's amazing because the bottom of the tree shouldn't have been as warm as what they were. I don't know. It seems like the heat had generated all the way to the stump almost, and it's just.
When you look at the Sumerian tablets, right, they tell you, oh, it's Nibiru, it's Planet X, it's the Red Dragon, it's whatever you like, Ison, they've given it so many names, but you've got to stay in this reality. And even in the tablets, it may be showing that someone is ushering in a new light or a new sun, if you like a replacement. But my friend Helen reckons that we shifted, and that's a great possibility as well. But without truly knowing, without having it's like a couple of years back, they shut down all the observatories. Why did they do that? All at the same time, everywhere. And you begin to wonder that they were doing something, and it was only for eyes to see. And it was around about the time that I became ill. So I couldn't say what that period of time, what they were doing, but I know that in 2019 we had only 2 really weird days where it's like, how can you have extreme hot weather and then just go back to normal?
Exactly, it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. You really don't. Unless it's being controlled that way. And I mean, it's very bizarre because the weather patterns throughout the world, Christian, are getting very strange. One of my best mates is a Greek Cypriot, and he said like recently they've had snow like in like Greece where they've never had it before. They've never had snow in parts of Greece that have never seen snow before. And I was in America a few years ago. I went to see my auntie who's passed on now. She lives in Henderson, Nevada, and it started snowing over there a couple of days before Christmas. And I went in to buy a couple of Levi 501s because they're so cheap over there, about $11 a piece. And I said to a young guy who was about 35, and I said to him, when was the last time you see snow? And he said to me, sorry about this terrible American accent. He said, man, I've never seen snow before. He said, I've never seen the goddamn thing. So it seems like even it's not just here, Christian. It seems like weather patterns.
I think you're realising that certain places in the world have very similar temperatures to us.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're in the desert there. Henderson, Nevada is just very near Las Vegas, and it's like the guy said to me, it cleared up. I must admit, the next day it cleared up, and it was that's the strangest thing. 2 days later, I was walking down the strip in Las Vegas, and it was about 85. That was before Christmas, but then it's very bizarre because a lot of people over there were saying it. They're saying, I can't believe it's actually snowed, and then a couple of days later, it's as hot as you like, you know, as hot as a furnace.
Right. Are we going to finish this subject because we've got more to talk about?
Yeah, go on, because I've just got to the toilet.
We're recording, Christian.
When you got to go, you got to go. You know what I'm like.
Well, I've stopped it now. Oh no, we're still recording. We'll just wait for Christian.
But how bizarre is that? I mean, you know, I don't know if any of you folks have been to Las Vegas, but no matter what time of the year you go,
they're saying it in the Middle East. They're getting snow there.
Yeah, they're getting snow in places like, you know, like I said, in Greece, they're getting a lot of snow now.
So it's almost, you know what, in that video the other day with that woman talking about galactic stuff up there, which we know it's not outer space, it's inner space. Oh, I forgot what
you lost your sort of like train
yeah,
of
because
thought.
we said inner space.
Well, I mean the thing is, folks, it's like.
Oh yeah, she said that we were being turned round.
Yeah, she was saying yes.
So that means the weather would change.
So the weather patterns are changing worldwide.
Whether you believe
and
her
of
or
course, because the creator made this place and he knows how it all works, they're messing with it. And of course, they haven't allowed for certain things. This is why you've got these weather abnormalities going on, I think, Karen, because they haven't allowed for these things. So they're like. My opinion is, Christian, that you know they're trying to adjust the weather their own way, and it was the creator's choice how to do it, and because they're manipulating it, they're getting parts of it wrong. You see what I mean?
Yeah,
it's not going quite as they planned.
If you mess around with a system that's been running forever and ever, I mean, when you go to the likes of Tartaria or the period of Tartaria with the mud flood, something definitely happened.
Well, we can talk about that in a minute because we're going to go to the Japanese mud flood, so we'll talk about it in that bit there. But in that video you liked, Christian, I said it to Gary. Remember, she says we're being turned round.
Yeah, and I got there might be something to that with what you're saying about Japan in 2011 going into 2012.
Anyway, she put the video on, so the next bit, right? The next subject, because obviously there's other things as well we can talk about, but I did tape a little bit of video. Where are we? Let's move on. Here we go. We are in, right, it's coming here. It says Lake Powell, and basically what they've done is, we've done a few on this, just a couple, just to talk about. They have put reservoirs over town, so it's not just Texana, or what was the other one? Texana and... Oh,
you was looking at. I didn't.
The other town I brought up the other week that was being destroyed. There's also this place here that's got a town underneath it. And what was your one?
And Rutland Water, because you know when Karen started speaking about this, I said I know a little bit about this from about 20 odd years ago when I went. It was after my accident, so it was in 20 years. And Jill said to me, "Hey, Gareth, do you want to fancy coming camping at Rutland Water?" And we couldn't have turned out a worse day, Christian. You know, the weather was abysmal, but that's another story. But we see it, and we see this church. And at the time, I didn't know much. I didn't know anything about Tartaria. But looking at it now, it looks very. I said everything's buried, even the church. And when we got it up, the church is the one thing I remember now that isn't buried. But the whole town is underneath. There's 60 houses that basically they never knocked down. They literally just flooded it.
Yeah, that's in our next bit of video.
They made a dam and they just flooded it.
This one here, look, there's trees below water level. And they flooded. They made this into a dam. This one's Powell in America, and they found a boat, and they're finding things, and they're now camping in areas where there used to be water. And the other thing is that we've realised is that whenever you see sand, so the Sahara Desert was obviously water originally, and they seem to be able to take the flow of water somewhere else, and that's it. The water's gone, the sea dries up, and then there's boats there or there's sand.
Yeah. Well. Rutland Water was actually, in 1976, it was deliberately flooded. They made a dam for a couple of rivers that name sort of like phase me now, but basically they deliberately dug flooded it to make a reservoir. But what out with that is, if they manage to sort of like have enough water for a couple of 100 years, why do they suddenly do it? Are they hiding something, Christian? Because that church, we'll see it in a little while, the church does look very Tartarian, and maybe same thing with the wars and whatever. Maybe it's to hide stuff. Who knows?
Well, I mean, when you look at the canals and the way things were run back in the older days, I mean, there's a lot of canal systems, and when you look at history, that a lot of places were run merely by the use of water, and certain places that were running by water, like the Star Forts, every Star Fort was connected to a water system, and we know that water has the properties to create electricity, to create steam. Water is basically the ether, the power source of this world. We're 70% water, and it's all connected to that very fact.
And of course, water's a wonderful thing. I mean, poor old Stan Myers, bless him, like he invented a water engine when sort of like, he was given the option of selling his patent to the oil companies. It appears like they took him out because he ended up getting poisoned. So water's a remarkable thing, and what we're breathing, I think, is a very sort of like diluted form of water.
Watered down water.
It's watered down water. So water is everywhere, and it's like it's a miraculous thing. But I just wonder, like, whether some of these man-made ones, the reservoirs, but why did they do it? Why did they do
making so many reservoirs? We had that great big lake. Remember in California,
yeah.
Lake Clyde, and then they seemed to get rid of that, and the rivers got smaller and smaller. And now it's turned into the Salton Sea.
I mean, you still get hosepipe bans. I mean, I actually sort of like was into free energy.
Potholes show there's water just below the ground.
I've always been into free energy. Christian, I remember like when my mum and dad was alive, bless them, they're both gone now, my stepfather and my mum, because there was a hosepipe ban. What I did, I put 3 water butts in a line, like give him access to as much water as he wanted, and then neighbours used to complain and phone up the council 137 like I usually like, but then I quite easily take them round and say, well, actually I've got 3 water butts here, and then I also had like a 12-volt pump in there to so he could actually spray the roads and all that. And then you think to yourself, hang on a minute. How they've got all these reservoirs? How can there be a water shortage? It doesn't make sense. I mean,
because a lot of the reservoirs they don't put the right gravel or the right flooring
and
in,
it just maybe
and
just
the water
sinks
through.
I
So
mean,
what was the point of that?
Yeah, well, I mean that man-made reservoir, Rutland Water. I don't know how they did that, and I mean that's always
Just to
perplexed
explain,
me.
we are coming on to Rutland.
Yeah.
What it was, I was just showing you this one because this is a man-made lake with
Right.
things buried underneath it. Yeah, they're finding a boat here, but there are buildings which I think we're going to get to in a minute. But there's just things under the water. It's really weird that we just don't know what we're living in. That things are buried,
we have no
ruined.
idea. Well,
I think Gary's right about the free energy because, I mean, if we had free energy, we'd be run by a totally different system. You'd more or less have your monetary system thrown to one side, right? Which they're doing anyway, in producing it into another form, into virtual money. But the whole point of it about free energy would make you live a life totally differently to what we're living in today. We're being persecuted by the monetary unit, which is being more and more or less weaponized daily. As we're going forward in time, that's what they're doing. They're keeping the same system going, changing it slightly, but keeping the same system going. But free energy is the answer. And when you look at, remember the dynamo on a bicycle? You were making light without even trying to.
Well, I actually see a video. It was about 3 or 4 years ago where a guy made a free energy machine, and he's had professors and lecturers come round to look at it to debunk him. And of course, there's no such thing as free energy. He was using ball bearings, so things do wear. But then again, I even have to dispute that because I've looked a lot into a lot of these ancient churches and cathedrals, and that the gold and the copper was taken out of them, out of the dome, and I'm wondering like whether they were free energy machines without any moving parts, Christian, because that is the key, isn't it? Because people turn around and say, well, no, actually it's not free energy. You've got bearings that are going to wear, because a lot of people make these, you can get a Siemens motor out of a washing machine. I don't know why it's particularly a Siemens, but apparently people that have got a rushing canal or river can make a free energy sort of like electricity. But of course, you still got wear on the bearings.
I think basically.
Oh, sorry. Very quickly,
basically-
just very quickly for the video. This is the village or the town
Oh,
that's
this is it.
underneath.
Okay.
And because the reservoir has dropped, it's now showing. This is by Hoover Dam. That's showing the town that was there.
'Cause it's
so this
dropped.
this is the school that was left.
Right.
So it's showing parts that they've filled up with water. Is now because the water level's lower. It's showing, and then obviously Rutland's next. But carry on.
Yes, go on. What was you saying, Christian?
Yeah, when you look at all the buildings, right, this is where the free energy systems comes in. Whatever photographs you look into through the last 200 years or so, that you'll see these poles everywhere. They look like fish bones in the air, you know, like a skeleton case, basically. And when you look at them, they've got no wires attached to them. And you think, well, hang on a minute. There was a time that when I was a kid, some of these poles still existed, but they had wires. But when you look at these old photographs, none of them had wires. So was it all grounded? And when you look at the buildings themselves, that the type of material the buildings were made of, that they had a metal framework, you go back through time. All the way back through time, even the Romano-Greco buildings.
So why don't the people look very advanced then?
I think what it is the technology is still the same technology. It's just been transferred. It's like I think we live in an electromagnetic world, right? And
Definitely,
the photosynthesis is part of that. You give it light, it'll bloom. Yeah, but the electricity seems to be something that's way going back throughout every century you can go through. The Egyptian had what you call the Baghdad light bulb, if you like, where there's no candle wax on the walls within any of the buildings, within the pyramids. You know, when you look at it in that respect, they had electricity. Whether it's free electricity and how they made it. You can make electricity using certain chemicals. So, you know, it's just old technology being lost to us. So basically, they were probably more advanced with knowledge than what we are today. Because when you look at all the smart stuff in today's society, it's dumbing you down even further.
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
People's attention span is like, oh, I've got to look at this, got to look at that, TikTok. There's no time. You know,
It's to keep people in confusion and looking for the truth like we do, Christian. I mean, you know, listen, a lot of people say that Tesla was a fraud, but he made that Warburg Tower, and he turned around, Warburg or whatever it's called, and he turned around to Westinghouse and said, "Here, look, I can get free energy out of the ether." And of course, that was no good to Westinghouse because he ain't going to make any money out of free energy. So it was like that. They pulled the blinking thing down.
well, Martin actually produced in one of his blogs that Nikola Tesla had books which were written 150 years prior. So this is what the lost technology is.
He was just reinventing it basically, Christian.
So we're talking of the 1700s then, aren't we? Which seems a really
1650s,
pivotal time because
1680s.
that's when Martin Leakey was talking about they did this the whole nervous system in the 1700s, which just seems incredible considering we had candles and quills in our world. That's how they told
that's
us.
right. When you look at old sort of like historical books from sort of like a couple of 100 years ago, like Jack the Ripper's day or whatever, like, you know, just over 100 years ago, everything looks so old, and like they're walking down the road and they're lighting candles on street lamps. They got gas light that was unreliable and all that. Now we've only got their word for this, haven't we? Is it reality? Because then you see some of the world fairs, Christian, where they had these magnificent light bulbs. How were they was all powered? You know, they had these magnificent glass structures.
The buildings being the actual source of the energy. When you
Precisely.
look at these buildings,
They told us that those fairs really, and even fairs, are to sell electricity. So the fairgrounds, not just the fairs, the world fairs, but the fairgrounds would have electricity going around everything, and then people come look at it and they go, they're hoping that would get electricity into people's houses. What a load of rubbish.
Yeah, well the thing is you had
We already had it.
You had Tesla that was sort of like going with wanted to go with AC, and then I think it was Edison, wasn't it, wanted to go with DC, direct current, and of course Tesla's model won the day, and obviously for obvious reasons, you know. I mean, and direct current, if you have the same amount of current, it's not going to throw you off. Number one, you're going to get electrocuted. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had a zap of electric, but I have. Once I was like doing a bit of work on something that's plug or something, I forgot to blink and switch it off or something like that, and bang, you know, and it didn't half give you one. I remember my cousin got thrown across the room, but of course, if that was direct current, it would hold you to it, and you're dead. It would literally.
Well, I'm the sort of person, I think I hold a lot of energy, right? For the simple reason, I'm going back 30 odd years ago when taking off a jumper, I got a really nasty spark.
Yeah,
you know,
I
just
do.
taking the jumper off. You know, that tells you we've got a certain amount of energy within our bodies alone. So we are energy.
Right,
You know,
listen. I've got to interject there, Christian, because it's a very important thing. I'm sure we've got a certain amount of synchronicity going here. I said to Karen, I said electrical things don't work around me. Maybe like when you become more awakened, like your consciousness becomes more awakened. Well, I said, just bugging me. We went down to sort of like the local co-op, and I said, this would be interesting. Let's see if this like self cash point sort of like works. And what happened, Karen? It didn't work, did it? It did not work, and I stood away. I said, this ain't going to work. I went into a bank before, and I was doing some work with a cashier, and I said, don't be surprised if your computer don't work. And she turned around and said, what do you mean? And she said, I better stand away. I said, because I don't know whether I've got some kind of electromagnetic energy coming up with me, and she said, bugger me. She said, my computer stopped working. Now, whether sort of like it was the combination of me putting the fear of God into her and her having an effect on it, I don't know, but it's happened to me so blinking much, and there must be something in it.
Have you got problems with phones?
Sorry?
Have you got problems with phones?
Yes. Sometimes it's like yesterday the sat nav didn't work on my phone, and then like for a reason I wanted to find somewhere. But
so we're just at Rutland now.
Oh, we're at Rutland Water now. Now, if you have a look at this church, Christian, it looks very Tartarian like, and it's got that same little dome thing at the top. It's not like.
I suppose that's a bit like that place you saw in Newbury.
Well, I said to Karen.
Remember the place you saw in Newbury?
That place in Newbury, and I said the same
That's
thing.
a Catholic church.
Now,
I
don't know if you know Brentford at all, like in West London. It's very near Kew Bridge. Well, that's got one of these big water tower things. It looks very Tartarian. If you sort of like look at, when you can see this eventually, you'll see this like this little tower on the top, and it looks like it's the same thing again. You know, a lot of people are saying now that they removed the gold and the copper from these structures, like for personal gain and to stop them being free energy machines. Well, it makes perfect sense because, I mean, you look at the cathedrals, like we can't build them now. Stonemasons now turn around and say they can't build them, Christian. You know what I mean? They say we haven't got the technology.
Well, this is what I posted earlier. I was saying that these people, they were genius in the way they built. Not just the artistic point, but the architectural point, and the way it all just made pure sense. And the very fact that the spires were more or less like massive capacitors.
And we don't know whether we were actually just
energy.
pagans then, and then they brought Christianity in, and that's the Romans and everything, which is. Remember we just
I wonder, Christian, whether like the whole building, even because everything like even rocks. People say, "Oh, rocks just a bit of dead material," but I'm wondering, like, even in these big churches, whether they act as some kind of capacitor and store a charge as well. So the whole thing itself, that everything, even like the stained glass windows.
Can we just say that this is another man-made?
This is a man-made reservoir in Rutland, and I've actually been there and seen it.
It's up near Nottingham. It's a small county.
It's between.
But the village is under the water.
The whole village, they
this
flooded
was 1930s.
it. No. In 1976, they flooded it.
Yeah.
They flooded it in 1976, and what happened was, there wasn't enough water in the East Midlands, and I was very intrigued because when my friend Jill said, "Oh, we're going to this Rutland Water, it's a lake," and I said, "Oh," she said, "No, it's a reservoir," and I said, "I knew reservoir like with." 9 times out of 10 man-made, and when I went up there I found it very spooky with this church sitting in the middle, but all the rest of it you've actually got like them signs that you see that tell you what the history of it. East Hambleton it's called, or West Hambleton or something, and there's a complete village underwater because this is quite a big reservoir, but they've made a lot of money out of it because now that like, people cycle around it, Christian, and they got like campsites, they got like cycle trails, cycle shops and all sorts, but it just seems a bit of a shame like that they had to flood this village. This village must have been right at the bottom of a valley, I suppose, but it's still. You picked up on a good point earlier. You wonder sometimes how you can get yourself a bit of sand in something, you pour some water in it, and it just sinks to the bottom, and it all dissipates. How I mean, I know there's a scientific reason why water just don't carry on sinking down. Do you know what it is, Christian? Because I certainly don't. Is it the pressure?
It's called the porous factor, isn't it? Depends on how porous it is,
Yeah.
and how it can hold the water. I mean, when you look at the history of creation, if you like, and you see these giant trees, and then you begin to realise that some of these places that have been built, they've been built on solid structures. And when I say solid structures, were these places gigantic trees that were petrified in ancient times that make them more solid?
Yeah.
And the fact that they don't sink. Some of these places don't sink, and when you look at various places like the giant cathedrals, you begin to understand that they've been built on solid ground and they haven't sunk. You know, but in other places where the smaller ones that have been built in the same fashion, they've sunk. You know, I've come across churches here or smaller cathedrals like that. They're almost like cathedrals, but they've sunk into the ground because they've been built in various areas where the foundations isn't hard enough to hold them. And then when you look at the time of Tartaria and the amount of places that have sunk, and I'm with Martin on this about liquefaction, that perhaps the energy, that system that was being used at the time was like a power surge, if you like, and it caused too much vibration and it caused the earth to shake all over the place, in various places, and it caused liquefaction. And I think that's probably the reason why people think there was a flood in more recent times.
Yeah. I know it's another thing. We went to Donington Castle a few days ago, and it's a fair old trot up to the top of the hill there. Now, I was looking from. I didn't have a sort of like spirit level with me, but I was looking, and I said to Karen, I said, "This is amazing." I said, "I've done a lot of building with the old man when he was alive, and that looks pretty square. And it don't seem to be no sinkage." So
on the castle, you mean?
On the castle.
It's not flat. That land's flat.
And
up there.
now the thing is,
they flattened it off.
It's at the top of the hill though, and you think it's not. Doesn't look like it's on any rock bed or anything.
They flattened it off, Gary.
And I just noticed it. There was no sinkage at all. It looked, and that's from like about the 13th century.
Yeah.
13th century, and it looked like, I mean, you know, it's not like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, or, I mean, I see modern buildings like that have got sinkage, because of course, I actually had a flat once, Christian, where my old man said to me, he said, "Here, Gal," he said, "I'll get rid of that if I was you." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "That's going to need underpinning, and because you bought it, you're going to have your share." It was a council flat, and you notice that all the brickwork, I don't know if you've ever seen that, where the brickwork starts coming away from itself. You know, in between the building, and he said to me, he said, "Here, this has happened in this block. It's probably because the roots have grown underneath it." And he said, "The trouble is, because you bought that place, you're going to have your share." And what's happened just recently with all this cladding with Grenfell Tower, people are getting bills of like for that alone, for cladding, for all these look like thousands of pounds. And I was thinking, oh my God, I better get rid of it. Now, what's happened to that flat now? I sold it to the bloke in good faith. I hope it hasn't needed underpinning, but there was a good chance. But my point about this is some of these old buildings, the foundations must have been remarkable because they haven't seemed to have sunk. And this one here, when you'll see it, Christian, it's actually built. It's on a jetty, isn't it? Out onto the reservoir, and it seems to be completely rock solid. So you know, it's maybe they had different ways of doing things in those days with foundations.
And a little higher than the rest of the water where they've sunk the town, unless they did. Unless, Gary, a minute.
Yeah,
unless they did knock all the buildings down in there, but not the church on the edge.
Right. No, they didn't. The buildings were, according to sort of like what I got this morning, they just literally flooded the place. They left the buildings as they were, and just because it was going to cost them money, they just flooded it all out.
I mean, one of the funny facts, right? This is a funny fact. I worked in the building industry over 40 years ago.
Yeah.
We never built anything with cellars like where you go below ground.
Yeah.
My brother has worked within the building industry, and I said, "How many houses built in over the last 25 years that have got cellars?" And he said, "Not one, not one single."
Is that because they get flooded? No, my old man said to me, because my old man's been my stepfather, like he was in the Merchant Navy, and when he come back to England. Oh, he moved to Australia like in the early 60s before he met my mum like, and when he come back, he started buying houses. And I remember when I was buying my first flat, he said, he said, "Gal, I'll give you a little bit of advice. Never buy a place at the bottom of the hill, and definitely don't buy a basement flat at the bottom of the hill." And I see what he meant, because people that have bought them in the last few years with all this flooding going on, they've all been flooded out, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say was, some of the older places
So
here.
what you're saying is the places now are saying they've got cellars, but they weren't cellars because they've been mud flooded.
Yeah, I was just going to say that where my nephew moved into a house, which was one of the older houses, probably 200 years old, but the cellar itself has got bricked up windows and a bricked up doorway in the cellar. And, you know, from that point onward, you just know that that must have been ground level at one point, you know, where you used to just
I wonder
walk
what was on the
outside.
top of those things.
Yeah, well, we see it down when we used to go down to Hyde Park. You could walk around sort of like, you know, around in Mayfair even, and you can walk around and you see sort of like half a window in the ground. And I mean, let's face it, you wouldn't build like that. I mean, unfortunately, when my stepfather was alive, he's been dead since 2010. We didn't. You see, these things have always been there, Christian. But it's only now we're becoming awake and we're noticing them. I could have walked him round and I would have said to him, "Here, Dad, why would you build that into the ground now?" And I'd like to hear his opinion. I'd like to hear any modern day build, because they're going to have asked builders, and the builder would turn around and say it doesn't make sense. Why are you going to sort of like make a space for a window and have half it built in the ground? It doesn't make any sense at all, does it?
One thing I do
But
find.
you know what? There's a lot that would mean, you know, like we're going to put Japan on in a little bit, and you can see the mud flood coming down. It comes really quick. It destroys everything. So why don't we see wreckage? You know, when we see them all digging everything out, why don't we see lots of buildings and things? Because that's what will happen. The mud flood will pick anything up on its way through, and then there'll be buildings and things.
But if they got
there was no buildings in any of it. There was mud. There was just mud.
What you got to remember with Japanese buildings, I don't think they're built to the same kind of standard as what ours are. They're made of bleeding wood and stuff like that, aren't they? So they're just going to wash away.
Bamboo.
The bamboo and crap like that.
Well, actually, it did take. Well, I'm not sure.
Whereas if you've got, you know where I'm coming from, now, Christian, because if you've got a substantial foundation, that will.
Yeah, but we must have been like, it must have said on your marks, get so mud floods, and then everything mud flooded, and it would have been like, it would have been awful. It would have been catastrophic.
But did they have some kind of machine? I mean, some people were saying like Atlantis, like they got some kind of machine down there that switched on a couple of 100 years ago and called sort of like the liquefaction, and that's what caused it. I mean, it's all conjecture, but you're not going to build. Basically, what we're saying is, Christian, and you know as well as I do, there's no way you're going to build a structure with half a window sticking out the floor. It's illogical. It's completely illogical. The thing is, bricks are cheaper than windows. You're going to sort of like use bricks, and it's just nonsensical. I mean, you know, you'll get some professionals.
Do you know what? It must have been catastrophic, because if it was just a few buildings it would happen to, the people would have bricked the windows up. And don't forget, they've told us that, that building, the people go, that was a bedroom tax.
But the strangest thing is,
it couldn't have been. Yeah. It obviously was the same thing.
Yeah, if you went, because the thing is, they got a narrative to stick by. When I went to Wilson Technology, there was a building department there, and I used to get to know the guys. I was doing body. I'd get to know the guys that was doing all that, 'cause it covered a variety of things. Now, if you turn around to one of the lecturers there and said, "Oh, why would you build like a window sticking out of the ground?" Obviously, they'd have to have an answer for it. They'd turn and say, "Oh no, the reason they done that, gal, was blah blah blah." No, it's just complete and utter blinking garbage, you know. But you know, when I went there in 1976 or whatever, all this, we didn't know about this stuff. But I'd love to see a lecturer now that does building and say to him, why would you do that? And if he's being at all honest, like most of them are not, are they? Let's face it, we know with all the other subjects we cover, they're going to have some kind of alternative explanation. But really, you know as well as I do, Christian, there isn't an explanation apart from what we're talking about.
One of the things that amazed me is what you just said. There's an old factory here, and it looks like a really, really old factory. But then you establish that you've got other buildings that never sank just up the road from it, right? And you begin to think, well, this building looks like a Romano Greco building. And this building looks like something out of the Victorian age. And you begin to think, hang on a minute, which one's older? You know, we were told that the Roman period was like 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, and you've got this Victorian building.
Well, the first Reich, the second Reich, and the third Reich. So I'm thinking, actually, they're not. They can still say it's the Holy Roman Empire, but they're not telling us which one it is. And the third one, the third one is younger than the first one. So it might be that obviously the buildings aren't as old as they say they are.
Well, I'll tell you another thing as well, Christian. You should.
We're going to change the subject in a moment.
Okay, in a minute. Just one more last thing. If you get up some Tartarian sort of like architecture on your phone, and if you see a lorry driver and have a little chat with them, there's plenty to choose from. Like I'll choose Polish ones. Well, it doesn't matter. It could be any nationality. It doesn't. That's neither here nor there. But you only got to show him that, and you turn around and say to him, "Excuse me, sir, is this taken there?" And they all turn around and say, "Well, obviously, sir, it was taken there by a lorry." I said, "No." I said, "We've been told in the mainstream narrative that it was removed. It was taken there by a horse-drawn cart." And I mean, they laugh at you. They turn around and say it's absolutely ludicrous. So it's great because you can get people that are probably completely unawakened, but they can see it. They can say that's stupid, mate. You know, there's no way on God's green earth.
Well, I mean, yeah. I've worked in the steel works. I've worked in the foundry works, and I've made some really big things and been involved in making them. But when you look at these old power stations and you just see the sheer size of some of the equipment, the pumps that they made, they're like humongously big. And you think, well, what age period? Where was the foundry? Even the foundry.
They're going to say turn of the century, like 1900s, like 1910, 1920. That's what they'll tell you.
Well, I'm talking about the 17th century, right? The 1700s. I worked in a foundry that was from 1780 or thereabouts. So you're talking more or less 300 years ago. But this foundry was already, the whole foundry was still there. But it didn't have the equipment to build something as big as one of these big power pumps that you see that's still about today. They're humongously, they're gigantic. So what time period are we talking about? Are we talking?
Yeah, I've already said that to you. Is it that there's Tartaria and the Victorians? It's like there's two eras going on. 1 second, go to ask, because we're going to change the subject in a moment, because obviously this video's finished and I've kept playing it over and over. Yeah. Do you think that's all the building? I know you can't see it, Christian, but is that half the building?
The thing is, the foundations have to be under that jetty. But my point is, it's very strange that there's no sinkage there or no subsidence when you think the water is going right around it. It's very bizarre, you know. Like I said,
they always built brilliantly, didn't they?
I mean, their architecture was brilliant, but basically their foundations seem to be a lot better than what we can do today, because all these ancient structures, they don't seem to be no sinkage in them, Christian. It's very bizarre. Like this church, when you eventually see this,
or whatever it was.
Well, I think it was a free energy machine probably, but whatever it was, obviously it was a place of worship in the last 100 years until they hijacked it. But it seems very strange that it's out on a jetty. But there's no sinkage there. I mean, whether they sort of like...
Well, they've obviously built it up a bit with the jetty.
Maybe they underpinned it.
It was obviously a bit lower in the water, and they've put that jetty around it to stop it sinking.
Maybe before they flooded the whole reservoir, they sort of like underpinned it already.
You can see where it is under the water. Look.
Yeah. It's very bizarre, but like I said, you know, we've been told so much garbage over the years that now with the discerning eye, you know, you don't have to be Nikola Tesla to work out it's complete rubbish.
We're changing the subject.
We're changing the subject now anyway.
It's going to flick over in a minute,
okay.
But until it flicks over.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, is a part of that building... I know you can't see it, Christian, you have to wait for the video, but do you think a part of that building is underneath then?
You're meaning like a mud flood kind of thing with another structure underneath?
Well, no, there's just another like level.
Another level. Well, either that or the foundations.
That looks like half of it's there, doesn't it?
Yes, that's a good point. Actually, I'm wondering, like, when you see this, Christian, you'll see where Karen's coming from. Basically, is there another building underneath?
Not a building, just another
level,
window.
Another level.
Another level of the church. Well, it's a.
I'll tell you
what
they
call it a church now, but it wasn't a church. It was Tartarian, and it was probably pagan.
I'll tell you what I'll do. Next time I go to my friend Christine, she lives up near Peterborough. I'll say to her, do you fancy it? And it'll probably be in the next week or two. I'll have a day out there, and then I'll be able to give you some more additional information about this. Maybe we can do a follow up to this because.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to be rushing.
Yeah,
but
we got to moving on.
Yeah, and also people listening. Right, we're looking at which one's this one. I've got to see what we're into now. I think this is Japan. I'm not sure. It's got to be.
It's a newsreader at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, he's just reading something, and we're not listening to that. We'll just see what he said. Oh yeah,
Japan.
Here we go. So this whole thing in Japan, Jesus, did you see how fast it went?
The landslide.
Oh my God, it was just so fast.
But you see, Christian made a very good point their sort of like level of engineering and structural integrity isn't like what we use, is it, Christian? Not most of the time.
Well, a lot of these buildings are on stilts and things.
Exactly.
They just seem to build them up, and maybe some of the, I don't know.
Now, looking at these buildings, I notice as well, Christian, that a lot of these, even the ones that are sort of like, say, made out of bricks and mortar, they don't seem very substantial. They're almost built on sort of like breeze block stilts, if you know what I mean, and they probably have a carport underneath. So obviously they're not the same kind of integrity as what we got, I don't think. But this has been absolutely
So basically
it
was there was three parts of this hill, and all this water came in, and then the whole lot sloshed down and created 2 or 3 different mud floods in one go.
Well, I mean, the power of water, Karen.
That's the Japanese Prime Minister.
The power of water is incredible. I mean, from sort of like the Asian tsunami, what damage water can do. It's just off the scale. What do you think?
The most powerful thing on earth.
Sorry?
The most powerful thing on earth.
Definitely. I mean, if you remember back to that Asian tsunami back in 2004, I mean, or whenever it was, 6 or whenever it was, I mean, that was off the scale. I mean, that was literally knocking down buildings, because you had the power. I mean, how many pounds per square inch going into buildings, and it was okay. The real substantial hotels stood firm, but there was brick buildings that were taken down.
Yeah, maybe it's all. Hang on. Maybe it's all to do with the cement they were using.
Of course, yeah, they might use inferior grade cement. Sorry, Christian, do you want to carry on?
When you think about history, you got to remember that this place has been growing over millions of years, growing, yeah. And when you look at the mountain areas, there may have been trees at one point and they're petrified. They're the most solid object in this world. And Japan started bringing down their mountains to create extra land and build cities where they put the extra land. And then they started having subsidence, and you can see the videos on YouTube where the actual ground is going up and down, and the water starting to burst through because they've tried to make extra land that doesn't exist.
But do you know, it's made me think, I wouldn't want to live in Japan. All it's got is what do you call them?
Tsunamis.
Tsunamis and mud floods.
And the odd hurricane, I think they call them typhoons, don't they? But yeah, I mean, let's face it, over here, Christian, I'm not going to go off the subject, but you're still getting a lot of companies that are building sort of like houses on floodplains, and they're saying, oh, it's never going to flood, like, and bugger me, like a year or two later they get flooded out, don't they? Why would you buy a place on a floodplain?
And in America, for instance, in America, you don't want to go and live where the Indians didn't live. The Indians knew about the mud floods, the tornadoes. They knew all that. And where are we living? In all the places they didn't. And this is why we're getting problems.
I mean, it seems strange that this has happened just now, because some of these buildings, Christian, they look like they've probably been there for, like, I don't know, you'll see it yourself, maybe 150 years or something.
This one didn't. The red one didn't go, but lots of the buildings
that's a bit more substantial. But it seems strange that is it weather manipulation that's caused this, because they're sort of like trying to be their own little gods, and they're manipulating the weather. And I'm just surprised this hasn't happened before.
Well, the irony here where I live, it's like you just said about the floodplains. Now we've been told over the last 40 years, water levels are rising, and then you begin to think, well, why are they building on floodplains here where I live? And you think, well, that
but don't forget, they took seas. I did a video about that, where anything with sand, that must have been a sea. They divert the water. That's what they do.
Yeah, I mean, Gaddafi in Libya was doing more or less the same sort of thing. He was diverting water and creating growth. And the powers that be, the social controllers, whoever they are, they didn't like what he was doing and stopped them.
Well, Russia got away with it, because wherever that one is out in the Middle East, the water was coming via Russia, and Russia decided to let the water go other places, and it stopped the water coming through to them, and now it's all dried up. There was nothing they could do.
I mean, if you remember a few years ago, the Mississippi River burst its banks. Basically, it doesn't matter how far nature will always win in the end. So what happened was, the town of Mississippi might have been saved to a certain degree, but then further down, like all all the farmland got completely flooded out, didn't it? It was absolutely deluge. I mean, it's the same as the Thames Barrier. I had a delivery once, Christian, to the Thames Barrier. Unless you see it up close, you can't really take it in. It's awe-inspiring. It's absolutely off the scale. But of course, I've actually got relations that live further down the Thames estuary in Canvey Island, and that's going to be devastated if they ever have the same floods what they had in '53. Well, my auntie was actually on the news that night in 1953. She was standing on the top of a roof because Canvey Island got devastated, and Holland did as well. Holland, it's just the right conditions: wind, high tide, and rainfall like you've never seen before. But now my cousin down there, he had a house right next to the flood wall, and I said, bloody hell, Fred. I said, how do you live here?
Look
And
at
he said, well, they built the wall up, Gal, in '53. They made it another like 10 feet. And I said, oh, that must have pleased you. He said, well, not really. He said, I've been up there before. Well, they've had a high tide, and it's only been about 2 or 3 feet below the wall. Now, of course, as soon as that breaches that wall, you're not going to stop it, Christian. You know what I mean? You're never going to stop it. It's boom, that's it. It's over again.
I think Karen's right. It's got something to do with the actual 4 rivers. When you've got a certain amount of water flow, like you've got China, they've built the massive 3-gorge dam, whatever it's called, and like Russia has built its dams as well. It's all about controlling the flow, the currency against the banks.
Currency, because they're even telling you currency.
Yeah, and they know that water is the main thing in this world that makes everything grow.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
I was a bit surprised at this Japanese one. We've been showing it just on the screen while you've been talking, but it comes down so fast.
I mean, literally, if you're caught in it, you're pretty much.
Is that
toast.
what happened to us? Look at it coming through the streets.
I mean, now this mud flood here is on a minor scale, right? If we had some kind of liquefaction event in the last couple of 100 years, and this was worldwide, I mean, it would be absolutely devastating.
But why didn't we see in any of the pictures with the flooding or what looks like them digging out, did we not see any buildings or anything?
No.
This is covered in buildings coming down, and you could say maybe the architecture was better and a lot of it was stone and brick, so maybe there was less rubbish.
I did
but
notice.
you're still going to pick up horses and carts and crap and buckets and
well, if you remember the Asian tsunami,
outer buildings. So why didn't we see any outer buildings or any rubbish in the mud? We didn't see any rubbish in the mud.
You see lorries coming down the street in the Asian tsunami. You know, it picks up just like Christian said, it's the most powerful thing on earth. If you've got that weight of water behind you.
Yeah, look, here we go. Look
you're
at
talking
that.
about tons and tons of pressure, aren't you, Christian?
We're watching it on the screen.
Yeah.
You know, and you ain't going to stop it. You're not going to stop it once.
Just look at that. I mean, I've slowed the footage down, so it's going twice as fast.
But don't you remember a few years ago, there's a place called Cockermouth. You've got to be careful how you say that. Up in Cumbria, where the river bursts its banks. No, the same thing happened up there. Where the whole place got devastated, and people that live there that was sort of like, you know, a fair bit older than us, probably got 25, 30 years on me, they said they'd never seen it before, and they've lived there their whole life. They've never even been to, you know, anywhere else, never been to Newcastle, London, anywhere, and they said,
I remember that very
yeah. But the strangest thing with that one was Christian, that, like, the people said that they've never seen it before and they're in their 80s and 90s. Is it because of the people that we're talking about manipulating the weather, and it's causing all these worldwide events?
So why is all this constantly happening?
They dried it out, didn't they?
Christian.
And it did it again, and it dried it out, and it did it again.
Yeah.
So I think that was some sort of testing. I think they were testing.
So why is all this
something.
happening to Japan?
Because they're probably doing the same thing in Japan as what they're doing here, because they're messing around with the weather
Would you want
patterns.
it though? Don't forget you've had Fukushima and
Fukushima as
why
well.
would you want all this
Got to be
happening
careful how
there?
you say that one as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Fukushima event. I mean, I actually see a video where you actually see.
And what about the nuclear bombs they dropped there? Why would you want all this happening in that area if all that's going on? It just pollutes everywhere.
Well, I'm not sure nuclear bombs exist. I think nuclear fission power
yes,
stations.
we know that,
Yeah.
but they did something
They didn't
there.
know that.
They
have
did
to always
something
go.
there.
They didn't get any warnings either, did they? There was no earthquake alarms that went off anywhere in the area in the part of the Pacific.
Oh, you mean
No
for this
earthquake
thing the
alarms.
other day? You mean?
No, when the tsunami hit Japan, there was no prior earthquake warnings. No alarms went off. It was like something that came out of the blue.
But that one over in Asia, the Asian tsunami. A good friend of mine, he worked in a school over there. Nobby. I still see him up until today. He was a school teacher over there, and he was telling me that sort of like the Thai people knew something was up because they were running up and down the beach, and they were saying to people they tried to save as many people's lives as they could, Christian, but no one listened to them. They were saying, get off of the beach, get off the beach, big wave, because they see the water going out, and obviously they've had nothing like on the scale it was then, but they've seen this kind of thing before, and unfortunately, Nobby told me that people just didn't listen. They just turned around and said, I'm on holiday, leave me alone, kind of thing. Some people did, but it's such a shame because, you can lead a horse to water, but he has to drink it, and they were telling these people, because they actually see the water going out, and of course...
It went out miles, didn't it?
It went out miles, and they knew, and the strangest thing is, animals have got like got a sixth sense, because apparently he was saying like all the animals were running inland. They was all running inland, and they was like all the birds were flying over into land and whatever. So they had a sort of like, they knew it was coming.
It's like they've got a
basically.
magnetic compass.
Yeah,
some things have got to be natural. Some things, but most of it isn't. Most of it's them doing things.
How do we know? Like that, sort of like look. This is supposition. A lot of people when they hear it's going to say, "I can't believe you say something like that, Gal." But we know what things they get up to. How do we know there wasn't some kind of like explosion a man-made explosion under the ocean that caused that, so they could wipe out a couple of 100,000 people?
You've got to consider the HARP systems they operate. And there was a lot of islands evacuated deliberately by the military so that they can install their own bases on these islands. And if they've all got HARP stations, they can manipulate the ionosphere to a degree that they can cause depressions, compressions, which will affect the magnetics, the natural magnetics, like you said earlier, Gary, of our world, and push certain areas into submission, if you like. We've got the magnificent weapon, and we can attack you whenever we like, sort of thing.
And basically, they can turn around one day and say, "Look at all the things we can do. We won't do it like if you stay under control," kind of thing. But another thing as well. There was actually, because I know this because I'm actually a qualified scuba diver. I don't do it anymore. When that Asian tsunami hit, there was some scuba divers out. And the strangest thing is, they was miles out and they hardly felt anything. But they felt like they were turned upside down, kind of thing. But what happens is, when it gets up to the shoreline, that's when it starts increasing in size. All they felt.
Well, I actually think tsunamis are really weird because I watched hours and hours and hours and hours of it, and basically it comes in like rebellious, going, "I'm going to take everything out," and even when main waves split up, that wave still carries on going, "I'm going to get everything, I'm going to kill everything in my path," and it carries on and on and on, and then suddenly it stops. It's silent for 5-10 minutes, whatever it is, and then it just turns around and goes back out.
Yeah.
But it's not as violent as when it came in, but it still goes out. So when you flood places like this place, where does the water disappear? No, it stays there. So why do the tsunamis stop and then go back out?
Because it's run out. What happens is...
Yes, Gary, but the thing is, it's been coming in and coming in and coming in.
When it approaches land...
And then it stops. Yeah. No, it stops.
It has to stop somewhere.
How can water do that? It just stops and then it goes back out.
Like it's got a mind of its own.
It's found its highest point.
Yes, but it would still stay flooded and slowly go out. It just goes back out. It doesn't go out as fast as it comes in, but it still goes. Most of it goes back out.
Because you know what we were saying a minute ago.
Well, this water's not going, is it? Yeah. This mud flood's staying on the land.
There was a boat out there, and they were scuba diving, and they felt it was like right across the ocean. They felt a rumble, and then the boat bobbed up in the air a little bit. But as it approached shallower water, that's when it started taking its size up. It started getting bigger and bigger and bigger as it approached shallow water.
Yeah, but there are different waves. There's loads of waves in this, and I also put a picture on Facebook on Facebook group to show you that there are these waves that come in that look just like a tsunami coming in, and they don't flood the land, and they come in. It's renowned for. Wait a minute. Sorry. It's renowned for what they do with their surfboards. They surfboard it,
certainly.
But all these waves come in looking like a tsunami, but they don't come on the land.
Well, I mean,
so you've got it both. You've got things both ways. So you've got. I don't know. I don't understand
Christian made a good point there. I mean, is it the fact like that HARP and other things are sort of like messing around with the sort of like the ecosystem of the whole.
Well, we did notice
whole
those
plane.
tubular clouds. They said,
Yeah.
oh, they didn't understand. For the last 30 years, we've had these clouds, and we're going, huh?
Because this place is like a gigantic big clock, and it has to work in symmetry with one another. And because they're messing around with all this stuff, they're
Does it mean our
causing all
time?
this.
Is it they're going to get rid of all the humans again?
Quite possibly. I think there's going to be a reset. I hate to say it. I think they want some. They want their version of the reset. My version of the reset is for God to step in and end all this madness. But I think their version of the reset, yeah, it's just sort of like the Georgia Guidestones. They said they only want 500 million in the world, didn't they? So yeah, what do you think?
It was like heroin. Tea was buying and selling tea, hundreds of company. It was like the tea was heroin.
Yeah.
I agree with what Gary just said, that it needs intervention of the divine to stop what they're doing, because I feel they've done this before in the past, not just once. And I agree with what Martin says, that it's like the cliche is that history keeps repeating itself. No, it's certain individuals that are doing it, so it does repeat itself. Yeah, and it's going to take a divine intervention to stop them doing it.
Exactly, because the thing is, yeah, I watched Martin's stuff this morning, you know, and I think he's right on the money with almost everything, and you know, I think they got their version, because all these people, they can only mimic the creator, they can't actually be one, but they try and be the creator, and they're mimicking the creator.
Exactly.
And this is the way they're doing it.
How do they live with themselves when they cause such catastrophe?
Because they haven't got no soul.
They ruin people's lives.
They don't care. There's people like, you know, what the truth in it was. People that are involved with the Gulf Wars and one thing or another, you know, the people that were instrumental in it, like we don't mention their names in case we get a strike, but you know, they go home at night and they must have slept a good night's kip, because you know they both looked as fresh as a daisy when you see them like the next morning, but. They're not like us.
Maybe they're still doing these kind of things, but they make up a lot of it. They tell us.
They make up a lot of it.
They tell us things have happened because they've made the news up, and we can't go and substantiate it.
I mean, the thing is, the good thing.
And you couldn't right now, could you? Because we can't really fly.
No, and the thing is, very often, you know, people believe things on the news. I'm sure this is for real, but in other times it's complete fabrication. I mean, I'll give you a little example. I'm not going really off topic, but it's similar to this. You know, can you believe anything you see on the news? I remember once when beginning this COVID stuff, like there was one of our friends in the truth community, bless her, I can't recall her name now, and it was all over the news that day saying, oh, you know, the Royal Free Hospital is absolutely deluged. There's hospital beds in the ward and one thing and another. So she was visiting. She don't come from there. I think she comes from Surrey or something, Christian. She thought, oh, well, I'll pop in there and have a look then. She's gone in there and it was as quiet as a bleeding daisy. There weren't no one in there at all. And she said, you better download this, because I'm going to put it all over Facebook and I reckon they're going to remove it. So my point is, anything we see on the news has to be taken with a critical eye. But this does look real to me. I don't think they could sort of like, they could make any of this up. It's for real, but you know, we don't know what to believe anymore.
You know, they make films of special
you would
effects.
You would have to phone someone up that lived in that village, wouldn't you, and say, did it happen? Did it happen or not? You know.
But they do make it. You know, they can make films. They can make. Oh, and he looked like he's wherever.
Well, the strangest thing is,
they can turn him into Terminator and do things.
It's when we've done the show the other night about my friend up there, Tim Peake. I mean, Gravity looks better than the International Space Station. The film Gravity. So the thing is, the thing is, Christian, you know, we don't know what to believe on the news, but with regard to sort of like tsunamis, I know that did happen, because you know my mate was over there, and we know 200,000. People died in. I'll give you a little story. One of my friends, like, he's got a business over there, and he lost about, I don't know how many workers. He lost a couple of hundred workers because he works on the railway, and of course the railways are very near the coast. Yeah.
Oh.
So what happened was he told my mate, and he said he lost a couple of hundred of his workers because they was working on the railway line near the coast, and it come along from nowhere, and they're instantly bleeding dead.
Well, looking at the footage, it kind of does look real.
That does look real to me.
Because often you can tell when they've done things.
Yeah, no, I mean,
it does look real.
This looks 100% real, but of course, in the aftermath of this, we want to sort of like see, because Japanese seem to live a very ripe old age, Karen, because of their healthy lifestyle. You know, sometimes they live well into their hundreds. I'd like to hear someone who's 100+ years old, a centurion plus, say, "Well, I've lived there for 100 years and this has never happened before." You with me, Christian? Then we know that. Then we can use that as sort of like some parameter to say.
Well, all I know is I don't fancy live in because they just have so many problems. But the whole of that Middle East is like that, and there used to be more land there, and there's a lot less land there now. So maybe it's all to do with that. Look at that! Look at that house! Look at that house!
It would be nice to get sort of like an old person's view on what has happened there, and if he's ever seen it before, or to this extent, you know, because it looks absolute. The place has absolutely been devastated, and they said there's 150 people missing. There's 20 dead already. There's 150 people missing.
The thing is, Gary, is that in recent times, it's the exact thing that they've been picking on. I mean, I can go back through my friends' family and my family, that the people that reached pension age in just recent years, like the last 3 or 4 years, I know at least 10 people that got into their 60s, reached pension age, been on pension for about a year or so, and boom, they're gone. Vascular dementia, Alzheimer's dementia,
Yeah.
you know, all these new
Is
diseases,
that
all
coming
stuff.
through the tea? There is some reason why so many people get Alzheimer's.
Now the strangest thing is with that where I live, like there's a lot of people with dementia. And I was telling Karen about a bloke that she spoke to, like, you know, and I told him something the other day, and when he phoned up this morning, he was really worried. He said, "Oh, Gary, where are you?" or whatever, you know, "I'm really worried about you," and he's forgotten. This seems to be a modern lifestyle thing, because I don't remember it. I don't remember dementia so
Well,
much.
maybe we were put into the lunatic asylums before, but today it's got to be Alzheimer's
yeah, actually,
or dementia.
my sister told me, she works in a care home, Christian, and she told me that the word dementia, if you break it, it sounds a terrible thing, but demented. And when they used to have years ago, they used to put these people in places like mental institutions because they thought they were mental, and of course they're not. They didn't realise how the brain works in those days. But it does seem a reasonably
more modern
thing. I mean, after my mum passed away,
we're on to the. Are we gonna?
She had vascular thing.
Yeah,
she had dementia, and that coupled with grief different ways. I went down the pub, like, you know, so I'd deal with it. It's not always everyone's cup of tea, but I just wanted a couple of drinks to calm my nerves after seeing what my mum went through, especially the last couple of years of her life, Christian. It was terrible. And I see a bloke in the pub, and he said, "You all right, son?" I said, "Not really, mate." I said, "My mum's just passed away, so I'm sorry to hear that." You know, he said, "Come and have a chat with me." I said, how old are you, mate?" And he said, "Oh, 96. And I said to him, "My God," I said, "you know, I've looked well to 96. And I said, "You've got all your marbles." So my point is, it doesn't happen to everybody. You know, he was 96, and he was every subject. I could have spoke to subjects to him what we talk about, which goes over a lot of people's head, and he would have got some of it, you know.
This is going to finish in a
Right,
second.
okay, we're moving on to the next subject now,
yeah,
Christian.
should we put it on? It's your favourite subject, Christian. We have been mined, and it's Christian thinks it's all to do with God.
Well, I'm going to let you do a lot of this talking because you're much more knowledgeable about this stuff than me.
We're just finishing.
We'll let you do your stuff now, Christian. For once, I'll keep my cake hole shut. Let you carry on.
We're just moving on. We're just getting to the end of this bit because I filmed the video. Right, is that the end? Come on. Right, here we go. So I just brought up a few places in mining, okay? And this one just said it was a white gold rush, and it's a lithium mine, and they found gold in that. But Christian reckons that it's all to do with gold mining, and we're just a place that's totally mined. And even me, I've been doing videos in Scotland on the slate, the sandstone, and this is all happening in the 1800s.
Well, I was looking to this because you're obviously, like, you know, Christian's very knowledgeable about his subjects, and you know I like soaking up new stuff on anything. So you go ahead, mate. You crack on.
Well, I mean, it's watching that video. There are no forests on the flat Earth, and when you come to the realization that this place has been mined for forever, basically, what it appears to be forever, and you look at the giant quarries of the ancient times, and then you go through the Antarctic. There's so much video evidence of it being mined, and various other places in the world that it's like something that's been going on forever. But yeah, gold seems to be the narrative that goes right back through every age that we've ever come across.
But you think that it's coming from the humans, don't you?
Well, yeah, there's a certain belief that it may be from what we believe, that when you go back through the scriptures, that it tells us there were giants, but then there was giants before that, and giants before that, right up to the point where you get to the Titans. The Titans were like miles high, and we're told that the trees were gigantic, megalithic, gigantic. When you come,
so why are they? So what if that was the case? Cremate us today for gold.
Well, it's like an energy source. I believe that the gold is an energy source.
So
And
why
when
do
you
they
look at some of
cremate
these-
us today then, Christian?
Well, I mean, have you ever seen cremated? Have you watched it yourself?
That's a very good point. A very, very good point. No, we
So
haven't.
what the Undertaker goes, quick, nick the gold
Well,
out.
listen, I've got to interject just this one little bit. The friend I'm talking about downstairs from me, Christian, one of his best mates is an undertaker, and I don't know if you know. I bet a lot of undertakers are going to hear this and say, "Oh, we don't do that," but it's not common knowledge. When the casket goes through, I've always wondered because I went to one a little while ago. Bless him, Graham. God rest his soul. He was only younger than me. Had the brass handles and all that. Well, the Undertaker told my mate that when it goes through, they take the body out and they take the casket back and then use it for someone else and they resell it. Now that sounds morbid, but would anything put money out of things? Does that sound?
I've the same story quite a few times.
Oh yeah, I'm so pleased, Christian, because you're the first person I've told this to people when they turn around and say, "Oh, Gal, I can't believe you'd say something. That's disgusting." But the thing is with Ken, he might have dementia. There's one thing he isn't, is not a liar. And if his mate told him that, he said, and I always thought to myself, that makes perfect sense, because why would they sort of like, what would they do with all the brass on the casket? So if we go one step further than that, what Christian's saying, how do we know that body is cremated and not taken somewhere else? And the ashes you get are from a pile of blinking, because ash is ash. It could be from a tree, couldn't it, Christian?
See, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people about this, and the people I've spoken to is they've never actually witnessed a family member being incinerated within the cremation centres, and even the film footages that you see, that you don't actually see the actual body going in. You know, you just see the burning of it. You know, like they show you an oven, but they don't actually show you what's inside of it. So I've never seen any real footage of somebody being placed, you know, directly into one of these chambers. Are they really, you know, what's being burnt? Are they body burn it? We don't know.
With the amount of bodies that are under Paris and so forth, it makes you wonder whether they are taking the organs somehow for. But they need you kind of alive to take the organs.
Well,
I just don't know.
Yeah, I went to when I was in Portugal. I was out there for about 6 months a couple of years ago, and when that was about 3 or 4 years ago now. And I went to a place called Evora, and I went to this. It's a cathedral town, and there's a Franciscan monastery there where the Franciscan monks were. And I went in there, and I went down the crypts, and there's not hundreds, thousands and thousands and thousands of skulls and bones and things like that, and I thought that's a very strange thing. But some people in the true community have told me that it harnesses energy. All that combination of all them skulls and one for another, it's everyone's
energy collection. Yeah.
Energy collection. Yeah.
How many people, now I'm coming up towards 60 years old, and the amount of people I've spoken to, not one of them has ever seen one of their family members cremated, and I'm talking about a lot of cremations. But the whole point being is about the catacombs is that the bones have been boiled down and cleaned, and then the bones have been positioned.
Yeah, and don't forget, there's not all, like, you've got heads and arms and legs. Remember, there's no hands. There's no rib cages.
Can I just ask?
Where's all
Christian,
that? Where's all that part of their bodies?
I want to ask you a question, Christian. So you think that the body's not even in a casket at all? Because we can't see what's in there, and the casket goes through, and the body's somewhere else already.
Well, I did a video about incorrupted bodies.
Incorruptible bodies.
And I thought that was really crazy, that if you get buried in a casket in the church or in a vault, you basically mummify. Only when they put you in the ground do you turn into just bones.
That's right. So you're saying then, Christian, that maybe when you're in a church and you see, like I went to one quite recently, when you see the casket, maybe the body's not even in there then. I don't even have to take it out the other side, because you don't know if he's there or not, do you? Or she's there.
Precisely.
Sometimes in America they do have open caskets, so you do see it in the.
So you actually see the casket go through.
Amy's gone through some where they've opened the casket.
That's not to say though that when it goes through the curtains that the body's taken out.
We don't know what they do with the bodies for sure. We really don't. But when you look at the catacombs, right? My main emphasis is when I first saw one, and my first emphasis was, this is a trophy room. It looks like a trophy room.
But
Yeah.
what supposedly happened was, I watched a video about that. They were all buried somewhere else, and it was over. There was too many bodies. This is in like the 1800s. Too many bodies. And then what happened was, they got a really bad storm, and then all the bodies started washing through the town. So they decided, because the cemetery was full, wherever they were putting the bodies, it was full, absolutely full. So they took the bodies out and they started burying them in patterns. And they were saying, oh, well, considering this is what's left, it's a very nice way of doing it. But
Right.
I look at it and think, where's their hands? Where's their rib cages? Even the bit from their neck down. There's just heads, arm bones, arm bones and leg bones.
Now, Christian, do you think there might be, like, we know industrial diamonds are made by sort of like, can crush carbon with you know, thousands of tons of weight on them. They can make industrial diamonds. So you think there might be some kind of alchemical process that can extract gold from parts of the body?
Alchemy,
Alchemy.
changing the blood structure, getting the gold out of it. You know, when you put all these things together, this comes from ancient times. You know, probably 1,000 years back. And when you put all the pieces together, like trophy room, that when you look at a lot of these places, that the skull's been placed between two crossbones, and that's skull and crossbones, and that's the insignia of the Germans, the insignia of the USA people. You know, it's the same scenario, it's the same storyline going right back to the pirates. You know, skull and crossbone. And when you think about it, it's their connection. It's their, like, two types of humans. The ones that just love to kill and use whatever they can through energy sources. You know, when you put it together like that, you begin to see that picture saying, well, perhaps there isn't us and them. You know, the realization of it. And then when you do your own research on the cemeteries that I've done, and you look for the graveyards, look through the graveyards and the gravestones, and you find, well, where's the gravestones from this century, that century, that century?
Oh, but we already know. When the churches took over the pagan buildings, then they started burying people in them, and that started happening in the mid 1850s, say 1850s.
No, but they were burying times in Rome. They were burying people in Egypt. They were burying.
Yeah, but they had
people
catacombs to bury them in, mostly, I think.
So why would you polish the bones?
Well, that bit I don't understand what's happened to them, because I do know what you mean. I mean, the ones in Paris, they look shiny, and it's like, well, where's the rest of their body? There's no skin, there's no bits of clothes, there's just bones.
Just specific parts of the body. That's all they use.
Yeah,
You know,
I do know what you mean about that, Christian. I think that's a bit weird, isn't it?
That just makes the mind boggle, and then you begin to understand, yeah, perhaps it is some sort of resonance that comes from the calcium in the bones or whatever, and they use it as an energy source. But to me, it doesn't sound like a positive energy source.
Negative.
More like a negative.
Yeah, I think what it is, they feed off of people's negative energy, like with the fear factor and whatever, the current rubbish that's going on and might be another. You know, the general population, most of them like fall for it, and they're feeding off of that negativity. That is where they get their power source from. Whereas sort of like with us, it's all about sort of like love and sort of like helping your fellow man, helping your fellow man and woman and one thing and another. Whereas them is completely opposite, and basically, the more devious that they are, and it's better for them.
The more enjoyment they get out of it. I mean, when you look at the TV over the last 50 years of my life, every part of it has been negative. It's constant. It's never anything good. You know, when have you listened to a news podcast that's been uplifting?
Well, you know something, with this current thing, I picked up on something straight away, Christian. You never see sort of like a holistic sort of like practitioner come on the TV and say, oh, there are also things you can do apart from sort of like getting, we've got to be careful what I call it a jabberwocky, getting the jabberwocky. You can go out in the sunshine, get some vitamin D on yourself, eat healthily, you know, doing a little bit of exercise.
So do you think the reason they want us is we're the farm?
Yeah, we're
when we die, they want the bits out of us, or like Christian reckons they're getting gold from us. Well, so basically, we're just a farm. They want us to die so they can harvest.
I think it's almost like a cattle farm with us. While we're alive, we're feeding off our negative energy. They're feeding off our negative energy. That's why you've got to have a high vibration field and be positive. And then when you die, what Christian's saying, then they're getting more stuff out of you. Is that correct, Christian? Something like that.
And when you become on that higher level, right, of a vibrational field, you become no use to them because you don't live in that fear factor.
We're no good.
One of the many reasons why we're doing what we're doing today is we're trying to look for the answers to what we're talking about right now. And when you start finding the solutions, yeah, like we are finding the solutions, and basically it's like Karen is trying to detective work on here, there, and everywhere, but we're finding out exactly what we're going through right now, and that's finding the answers to what we're talking about.
So basically, it don't work on us. It's like because me and Karen have been perplexed.
The hypnosis.
We have been, yeah. They're under one of our friends calls it like they're under a giant hypnosis where they're like living in the same reality as us but in a different kind of bubble, because me and Karen have been speaking about this for a couple of years, how we can't see how these other people can't see it, and it's just not part of their reality, but they're just living in fear. So if everyone was to raise their vibrational frequency, maybe not as high as us, but to even at a greater level, it's like it's beneficial to sort of like our cause, but obviously most people are not doing it, Christian. That's all I can think.
Well, precisely. I mean, the whole point that I'm trying to emphasise, I had a friend of at least 30 years, right? And we were always good friends, but one day I got walking up to the chemtrails, and I was the only one walking up to it in prime, and I kept talking about it, and it wasn't until my friend's plants got destroyed twice that she woke up to them, like she couldn't see them, even though I thought they were there. And I'm thinking, look, they're there, you know, but she couldn't see them.
Yeah, yes. It's like it's almost like you know,
strange.
yeah, it's so strange because I've given people unsurmountable evidence about all the subjects we talk about. Some highly intelligent people, I may add, not necessarily been to university, but they're still intelligent. I mean, one of my mates is a genius on maths. If I've got a problem, I phone him up, I say, what do you think this is? And then he'll go, boom, you know, he could do it straight away. Whereas I couldn't. It would take me like forever on a blinking phone with a calculator. But it seems like, because it's not part of they're part of their reality, they really, really, really can't see it. It doesn't matter what evidence you put in front of them, they can't see it, you know. And I've given up. We've got to the situation now whereby I'm sticking in my community, and if people like our friend Robert Frush over in, I've done a podcast with him last time I was here. Unless they come to me, I'm not going to bother anymore, Christian, because I think it's an exercise in utter futility. Because this was the one where everyone should have gone, boom. You know what I mean? But they didn't. Because
one of the real facts, Gary, one of the real facts, ever since I was a kid, that's like 50 odd years ago, you've had so many zombie films, even in black and white, you know, right through the ages, and they're still coming out with zombie films today. They're actually telling the human race, you lot are just zombies.
Yeah,
you know,
they're actually telling you in the predictive programming, and you know, if you can't get this one. And I actually think we spoke about this before just recently. I actually think they're so blasé about it, like having the first person to get the Jabberwocky called William Shakespeare, i.e. sort of like the novelist, coronavirus,
yes.
and they still don't get it. So they must think to themselves, we can do what we want. And I think it's like they're trying to tell us in the truth community, look what we can do to these idiots, and they still don't get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's scary to know what I know, because at the end of the day is once you begin to realise that you're awake, and you realise that even some of the celebs that have spoken out that get bumped off shortly afterwards, and it's not just been the odd one or two, it's been quite a few when you look at the last 10 years itself.
Yeah.
That the minute they speak out, they get bumped off. I mean, John Rivers was one of the people that enlightened them about Obama and Michael.
That's right.
And she was only at the dentist, and she comes out dead. You know, you think, whoa.
So do you think it might have been?
But that could have been one of his stories again.
Yeah. It could have been, but do you think it might have been like, because it's like with John Lennon, we spoke about it the other night off air. You know, a lot of people.
He started getting too openly and political, and telling people what was actually going on.
Because he actually said, didn't he, Lennon? He said, like, I think this world is just run by psychopaths and all that. And from then onwards, he probably wrote his own death warrant, because apparently they said, like, that the person that was on the conscience was one. So you can't argue with these people. They've come in and said, here, look, we've got one of our blokes. To the scripts here, but basically, what we're trying to say is like, you know,
nothing's what it seems to be.
Nothing's what it seems to be. I want to ask you a question, like, about the gold. Some people reckon that gold's like got some of like miraculous medical qualities, and they actually eat it. Have you heard of this? Or lick gold bars and things like that? Have you heard about this?
Yeah, well, that goes through history as well, isn't it? Whereas people used to dress certain foods in gold, and you had what you call gold-plated plates, you know, to give it that extra oomph. You know, when you consider all these, it's like they're just eating organic material. Yeah.
So basically, there's something in gold. It's like, you know, people have like that colloidal silver stuff or whatever it's called. I've never had it myself, but gold is even one stage further. Where as sort of like, because some people like have been ill with various things, haven't they, Christian? And they've taken gold or colloidal silver. They've come back from almost life-threatening like illnesses. So when the doctors have given up, the doctors have given up with them. They said, well, you might as well go home and have your palliative care from your family or something. And they go on the internet and they say, oh, let's get some gold, like, and maybe they grind some gold. They might have some old gold rings or something. Grind it down and literally ingest it.
So Christian, as you've been doing a lot, because we're coming to the end of this video now, but as you've been doing a lot on the gold, what's your explanation of what you think's happened with the gold? What it's all about?
Well, the gold is an energy source. We've already established that, right? I mean, the people that wear gold, it like enlightens them a little bit, like it makes them feel better. But when you consider it, I was told that when I was a kid, that the manna was gold, right? And we were fed Jesus fed the 5,000 on the manna, you know. And when you think the manna, well, if manna's gold, then it is a life-giving substance. And if it has more properties than just that, we already know it's used in electronics as well, yeah? But I can't say that all the gold in the world is being used on electronics. No way. No way. I keep saying this. If you research the amount of thousands of years that gold has been mined, Michael Tellinger says it's been going on for hundreds of thousands of years, right? And if that's the case, we should have a mountain of gold 100 times the size of Mount Everest, but we haven't. And if the case is that there were giants and the mountains have got gold veins, right, that some of these mountains were titans, right? And that's where the alias of gold veins comes from. You know, when you make all this connection, and then you see these giant footprints all over the world, and some of the Tibetan monks still worship these giants. They were the men of renown, if you like. And I'm not trying to quote the scripture or the Bible, because I haven't really read the Bible. But when you put it all together with today's society, the one thing that seems prominent is the search for gold in this world. It is so predominant everywhere that my nephews, even when he's fans out, keep watching the gold digging programs. And I can't see the fascination with it because I've never been, you know, the sort of person that loves trinkets and jewellery. You know, we either have it within us or we have it without us, sort of thing. You know what I'm saying? And I'm trying to establish what the fascination with thousands and thousands of years of gold is. And then when you make all these connections, especially with the Queen coming out and saying, did we meet this year's quarter? That really shocked me to the core.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another thing, right, Christian. I remember a good number of years ago, back to what you were saying a minute ago, they can ruin people's lives. There was a guy in the European Union, I think, you can't quote me on this, folks, but I think his name might have been Strauss or something, and he went to Fort Knox, and he went in there, and he got a key, and he sort of like scored the gold, and he was surprised to see that it was like brick. So it was basically, it wasn't gold, it was like it was brick covered in some kind of gold fleck or paint. Now the thing is, and afterwards, like, it was all coming out in the papers about how he'd been with prostitutes and all this other stuff, kind of thing. It basically pretty much ruined the bloke. But that's by the by. My point is, I think you've really picked up on something. Where's the gold going now? If the whole of Fort Knox there's no gold there, and they say the Rothschilds have got loads of gold, like in the city of London, which may not be. What are they actually using it for? I mean, I know people like having it as little shiny. Look, that's gold.
They used to use it, didn't they, on the buildings?
Yeah,
and on everything.
But I've got a gold like gold ring on that my dad, who died in 1974, gave me, bless him, and I actually have it sort of like. Had another little bit put in. Now you can't see the join or anything. It's a miraculous sort of like metal and material, but I can't get my head around, Christian, we're gonna have to sort. I'm definitely gonna get my head stuck into some of the stuff you've done and what some of your videos, because I'm actually perplexed by this, by what is actually gold for. I mean, we know sort of like the ancient
to make
free
a
energy.
diamond ring. So
Well,
it's supposed to be an engagement
well,
ring.
the ancient sort of like cathedrals and whatever,
One
like
of
they strip
main
the gold.
factors, before you carry on, one of the main factors is the gold that you get on the market is more or less the watered down gold. You know, like your 9-carat gold,
Yeah,
your 12-carat gold, your 5-carat
You want
gold.
21 carat gold, don't you?
Or 28-carat gold, you know, but that's rare. And if you do get it, you really have to pay through the nose for it.
Right, so can I ask you a question? Now, I've been looking into sort of like the cathedrals and churches like being free energy machines, and I'll tell you what I see on the guy with a 7-hour video that I sent you, Emra, whatever his name is, that guy. Well, I don't know if you've watched that, but he showed artist impressions of what he thought, and he said there was gold and copper. Now they was extracting like the energy out of the ether. I mean, have you got any views on this, or have you studied it at all? Whereas the guys, you know, in that dome, and it's all been stripped out. Like, you know, you had like probably maybe the gold was the anode or the cathode, and the copper was the anode, or vice versa, and they was extracting the energy out the ether. I mean, how would that work? Have you got any idea?
Well, it's the transference, isn't it? It's all about the transference.
Right.
We know that water has many properties in various ways, you know, from ice to sleet to snow to steam to high pressure. I mean, high pressure water is as powerful as a laser, if not more powerful. You know.
Well, they have cutting machines, don't they, Christian?
It comes back to water.
Yeah, they can cut through. They can cut through sheet steel.
The capacity of a laser.
They can cut through sheet steel, can't they? Yeah.
You know, and when you consider all these facts, the main part though is the end product of what's being done in this world is gold.
Yeah.
And it's bugged me now for 20 years.
This is such a fascinating subject. I mean, when Karen told me, and obviously, like she told me before, like about you're probably, you know, right up there, probably in the top echelons of all the truth community, to be honest with you, about gold. That's why I was so looking forward to this one, because of my limited knowledge apart from sort of like what I know, and today has been fantastic, because I've been so enlightened, and it's made me want to find out even more now, because it really is such a fascinating subject to me, Christian, and like you, I want to know what it's actually used for. Is are they sort of like got some fantastic like free energy machine somewhere with all this gold or something?
I think there's a connection between gold and mercury, and then you've got red mercury. All these elements are like power generators, if you like. This is what I believe. And if you use these in the right manner to create like a mechanism that creates free energy, well, towards your oyster, isn't it? Towards your oyster.
You are right, because sorry, I got it wrong. It was red mercury. It wasn't in the domes. It was gold and red mercury. It wasn't copper. Excuse me. Sorry for my ignorance. It was. You are quite correct. It was gold and red mercury. Now, what is the constituents of red mercury? What is the chemical compound of that? Do you have any idea? Is it what makes it different?
Again, it's got something to do with the blood. I think it's got it's a molecule of the blood, I suppose. There's a connection to it. There's got to be.
Did you know something? That makes perfect sense, because obviously, like mercury is mercury, like we have in thermometers and whatever, but what you have in teeth fillings. But red mercury is completely different again, isn't it? Do you think there might be some kind of there might be blood in it, or some kind of constituents of blood or something?
Well, they say that if used in the right way, that it actually becomes transparent, so you couldn't see it in a mirror. So it has got a valuable property. And when you look at the old paintings and old illustrations from more than 1,000 years ago, you know, they've been doing this a long time. This is what I believe, and they're still doing it today. So, I mean, you hear about adrenochrome, and you make the connections. I know it's all been hushed over, but when you look at the satanic symbols all around, and you start to establish for what they really are and consist of, you know, you start putting two and two together yet again, and you come up with something that's been around for a very long time. But it's all been done by the hidden hand, you know. Everything's been done by the hidden hand.
Well, a lot of people are buying gold and silver right now, and I just don't think it's I just don't think it's going to make you money.
Well, if you remember the Brinks Mat robbery, where they thought they was getting like money, like they ended
No,
up when they knew it was
we
getting.
watched the train robbery
We
one
watched
last
the
night.
train robbery last night, but they knew they was going to get bullying, but they didn't realise there was going to be so much. And of course, they couldn't get blinking rid of it. There's no avenue. It's not like getting a load of money and walking into a shop and changing it for different currency and whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember one of the guys that was involved in that robbery. He went over to Jersey or somewhere like that with a gold bar that sort of like someone else had melted down, and straight away they got in contact with the fraud squad or whatever and said, "Oh, we had a bloke in here with no." It had no sort of like markings on it, a fraudulent gold bar. So it's not like something you can just go, oh, I've got a gold bar, I'm going to go and change this to money. It's like bizarre, isn't it? You can't do that. With most other things, if you've got jewellery or diamonds or something, it might be an avenue.
Questions
But
get asked, don't they? Questions get asked.
questions gets asked. You can't just walk into somewhere, into a bullion dealer's Christian, and go, oh, I've got a gold bar, mate. Do you want it? Like, even though it's got like hasn't got no markings on it.
Well, we still don't even know why we're here or where we are.
But
I mean, there's one documentary I watched, right, and it was quite a good one, and it had the connection between the Queen and the Holocaust gold, and I'm going, what? You know, when you put that together, who are
Holocaust.
these people?
What do you mean Holocaust gold?
Well, there was a connection made between all the gold that was stolen from the encampments of the concentration camps.
Oh right, because the people, because the people coming in would bring all their. I'm gonna take that and that with me, and then there was gold and
the most
things.
valuable
Yeah.
possessions, aren't they?
Yeah.
Which would happen to be gold. You know, not just to mention their gold teeth as well. You know, and this documentary says that some of the gold in the Queen's vault were actually connected to the Holocaust gold. And I'm thinking, that's terrible.
Oh, golly.
I see a film the other day, and as soon as I see it, I thought, oh my giddy aunt, I've got to watch this. It's called McKenna's Gold, and it's like with Gregory Peck, and you know, I think it was here when I seen it.
Was born.
No, it wasn't that one.
Oh,
It
not
wasn't
that one.
No, McKenna's Gold. It's about this guy that finds this sort of like massive stream somewhere in Arizona or something of gold, and basically it's on Indian territory, and I was fascinated, and they eventually found it. They found where the gold was and whatnot, but the Indian gods didn't like it, and they sort of like brought all the boulders down. I want to ask you a question. Do you think all the gold that has ever existed is now been mined, or is there more out there, do you think?
I think it's come to the point where
Saturation point.
it's been very, very much saturated. I mean, one of the latest escapades was in Paradise, where they said, oh, there's going to be a high-speed rail link being built there. But from other reports that I came across, that when you look at the scientific point of view, they've done a scan, and over Paradise, they found a gold vein, right? And when you put that together, why it was destroyed, and you think, well, perhaps there's mining going to be over there. And then you go back to 2015, where there was a uranium and platinum field found in the area where Levi Finnegan lived, so they wanted his land. And when you put all these together, it's just about mining. And yet again, they wanted to mine for the uranium and the minerals. Yeah, that's back in 2015. Levi Finnegan tried to warn the people then that they're coming for your lands because they want to mine. And then when you put together Santa Rosa and Paradise just recently, if there's gold there, they're going to be mining it. Yeah, and then the military move in on Paradise, don't let anybody near, don't let you rebuild. You know, you just got to put two and two together, and it comes to the same conclusion that perhaps there is something to it. There's something there that they want out of the ground. You know, and
I was really shocked when we were looking at the slate mines that they actually started quarrying it in the 1500s, and really it was all over by 1910, 1920, and then basically said that this wave came in the 1800s. Well, one says 1850, one says 1880, and then it basically flooded these quarries, and you're like, yeah, but they would have had machinery. How would they have got the machinery on the... I just don't get it, and it's almost as if they flooded. Hang on, they flooded them on purpose because they were redundant. Maybe it's better to have it flooded than have a big hole. I don't know,
See,
but
one
it's
thing
like
that-
it's
one
still
thing we haven't got
redundant. They still got rid of it all.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
we've changed our
yeah,
roof
yeah.
slating and all that, but it's just really crazy to think it's all over by 1910.
I mean,
you know, we're supposed to be in horses and carts.
exactly, and I think there's a lot more to gold than meets the eye. I mean, I turn around to someone. I mean, it fascinates everyone because I said to a guy one day, I said, I'm giving you a choice, and he said, what's that? I said, right, you're on a desert island. I said, and I've got a bag of gold bullion in one hand, and a bag of bananas on the other. But you can't have anything else. You've got to have that choice. You'd be surprised, Christian. Most people would have the gold. And when I asked them why, I said, we haven't got nothing else to eat. They turned around and said, well, I take my chances. It's that important to people. They would literally have the gold over keeping themselves alive. They say, well,
Exactly.
I'm just hoping like a ship comes
Do you think
past.
it's just one of those things like gold is meant for something else, and the
yes,
way that they
yes, precisely. That's
and
what
the
I'm,
way
that's what
they've
I'm
made
saying.
it sound is they've pushed it into look, gold's for this, but really it's for something else.
I think gold is for something else, right? And they're making out that it's sort of like for jewelry. I mean, it's like what I was saying the other day with diamonds. They reckon there's enough diamonds out there for every person for every person to have a diamond for
like
£1, £1
Yeah.
each. But of course, companies like De Beers and all these Tiffany's and all that, they've got like warehouses full of diamonds.
Scarcity.
There's no exactly, Christian. There's no scarcity value. But with gold, it's a different thing again. I've got a funny feeling because what we were saying about an hour ago with regards to the free energy machines, with the it was my mistake, with the gold on one hand and the red mercury in the other, they've got. Maybe it's in like what do you call it? What's that? The Higgs boson thing. What's that? CERN. Maybe they've got it there for some reason. They've got some fantastic machine down there, and all the gold is down there. It's not a Fort Knox because the thing is, it's all relative, isn't it? What's one man's meat is another man's poison. I love gold. It fascinates me, but it's not going to keep you alive. I remember a guy saying it on the TV.
Not, I just don't understand how it's got so precious. But maybe it's a fool's gold. Maybe they want to keep you thinking it's precious, and making Christian think all these things when really it's not. It's something else they're using.
Do you know something? Our people can't see the simplest of things. I see a program with this guy, and he said, I don't believe money exists anyway. He said it because it doesn't. He says, I promise to pay the bearer the sum of whatever. Like he said, it's not. It's a bits of paper. He's right. It's dots on a computer screen. But then the bloke turned around and said to him, he said, oh yeah, but gold is going to be the currency and all that. And the bloke turned around and said to him, it like it went over his head. You could see he glazed up like we do when we talk about the stuff to other people that are unawakened. He said, but gold is like a little bit of coloured metal. He said, what actually is it? And the bloke couldn't answer him because you don't think about these things. And the bloke said to him, oh, but gold is value because gold is valuable. And the bloke said,
well, maybe
why?
they're using the gold in something else. Like
exactly.
colloidal silver is good for you, and lots of people take it.
Yeah.
Maybe they're using it into other things.
Can I just say this one thing? We haven't looked upon the open mines yet, and I mean some of these mines are the size of cities and bigger, right? And these are areas that we cannot go to, and they are absolutely humongous, right? I'm not talking about the Australian lithium mines. They're already starting on that, but I'm talking about some of these absolutely humongous, as well as the diamond mines. But the one thing is the fact that only a few years ago, we had gold purges where gold was being bought at 3 or 4 times the price, and you think, well, why are they doing that? Is there such a shortage on gold all of a sudden? You know, we've been mining it for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and all of a sudden we got a shortage on gold.
Well, I'll put something to you, Christian. I don't know whether maybe the elites and these people living off of negative energy, they get some kind of power from like gold, and they need it. They need it for their subsistence. It's like I like a pint of Guinness. They physically need it for something like not spirit for their mechanical being to actually work. It seems strange to us because it's just so intriguing to me why gold is so important. I know it's like got a rarity value which diamonds may not have, as what we spoke earlier, but I just think there's more to it. They're using it for some kind of free energy machine or something.
Can I just say that we've been going for 2 hours
now.
Me and Gary have to do something in a little bit.
We've got some.
Right, no, I'm going to stop the video just for a moment, and then we're coming back. Hang on 1 second. There we are. Okay then, so we've decided at 2 hours. This is probably enough,
no,
right?
Go on, Christian.
So basically, we'll start with Christian. Christian, explain it again, then Christian.
Well, I find it totally amazing that. I mean, even through the lockdown last year, the gold mines were still going, right? There was no.
That's an essential thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very essential. Gold is the most important thing in this world. You know, never mind anybody dying or being ill, you know, but yeah, there was actually a landslide of one of these gold mines. But the point that I'm trying to make is why did they have the gold purchase not so long ago and pay so much over the odds, you know, when gold mining has been going on for centuries and centuries and centuries? It's like all of a sudden there's a massive shortage of it. All of a sudden. So where's all the gold gone? If there's a massive shortage of it, I pay so much over the odds.
It's almost like.
What do we need it for?
Well, it's almost
how
like.
How many rings?
Yeah.
If no one can go and buy a diamond ring or something, why would we want it?
Now, it's like, you know, a poor junkie like has to have his heroin, like, otherwise, like, he's going to go.
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether the elites have to have gold for some reason. It's like they have. For their very being and their very soul, they have to have it. It's like their heroin. Do you get where I'm coming from, Christian?
Yeah, it's perhaps they take away the essential monotonic value of it, yeah, and degrade whatever, pass it on whatever's left. But I think most of it is used for another reason that we're not being told about. And I think it's the monotonic value of it. The life-giving substance, like the manna or the elixir of life, if you like. Either that or it is being used to enhance technology somewhere else.
Because you know something, say for argument's sake...
Oh, you don't think this is what makes the machines up, you know, these things...
Could be.
You know,
could
like,
be.
so we can't see them.
Maybe like Blue Beam or something like that, it could have something to do with it. It's got some kind of supernatural like power that we don't know. But, I mean, you imagine this, take this scenario, when you watch these films...
You said you couldn't see it in a mirror.
What's
when
that?
It's liquid.
Yeah.
So maybe they need that.
Okay.
For the... Because it'll make them...
You won't
be able to see the...
yeah.
You won't be able to
Okay.
see the spaceships.
Yeah.
Or whatever you want to call them.
System.
Interterrestrial beings. That's a
See
very
what I
good
mean?
point.
If they're using gold in it, then they'll be able to cover up the... What do you call them? I can't think what they call... What you say the right word?
Orbs, interterrestrial orbs.
Well, yeah, those, but it makes them so you can't see them. They're cloaked.
Cloaked, like a cloaking device. Like
Yeah, maybe they need some of the gold.
Do you know something? That's a very good point. I wonder whether they've got some kind of machine somewhere, like in Area 51, with, like, you know, 100 tons of gold that causes some kind of cloaking device or something like that. I mean, that might be a valid
Don't come
point.
near my craft. It's completely made of gold.
But you see, the thing is, I'll give you a little example that will make gold worthless. Say for argument's sake, there was a war or something like, and there was a little sort of like shop on the corner, like selling like provisions. Now you got nothing else, but this guy's got like some food in there. So when you got Asperger's, like, it's completely different than what other people do. I walk in with a gold bar and I'll turn around and say to the bloke behind the counter, "Oh, can I have them packet of because you don't like my peanuts, don't I? Can I have them packet of peanuts, please? I'll give you this gold bar." And it's in a different and he's going to turn around and say, "What use is that to me?" You see where I'm coming from, Christian? It's valuable. It's valuable because we've made it valuable. But when you really think about it, what can you put value on something if it's worthless in a situation like that? You with me?
Yeah, one of the other things I want to say before we go is the fact that the NASA module was covered in more or less like gold leaf or little gold lining, if you like a silky gold lining.
Yeah.
And you think, hang on a minute, the intensity of space in a vacuum. Why would you do that?
Exactly.
Oh, because we got to let the public know that we need gold.
Yeah.
You know, when you start putting all these pieces together, and Martin shows you that what they more or less show you in space is a little wooden craft covered in plating.
Exactly.
And you think, oh my Gideon, you know, when you put all these things together, it's like they're saying, well, we need the gold, so it's going to be really, really expensive. And I'm thinking to myself, well, they had plastic forks in the 1960s. Why would they say they need a metal fork, which is a lot heavier to carry into space, when you can take a plastic one?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, does it? And do you know something? I mean, we've touched on something now that I don't. Some of the stuff we've spoken about is gold because the three of us are working, you know, together on this. That no one's ever thought of like with gold because I've never seen a podcast in the truth community where they've gone to such levels of what actually gold is used for. There's another reason for it. It doesn't make sense.
Well, maybe it's to cloak things.
It might be a cloaking. You know something?
That are constantly flying around and we can't see it.
They use it for some kind of cloaking device. Maybe when they took all this gold out of like the free energy sort of like cathedrals and churches all those years ago,
Gary.
they had Tartarian knowledge.
I'm doing a Vulcan sign to him.
Okay, Vulcan sign. Yeah, there you go. live long and prosper. No, basically, like maybe they're using it for something completely different because, like I said, it's a shiny bit of metal, a very nice shiny bit of metal. But you know, you don't have to have it, do you? It's not life essential. You have to eat.
Well,
You have to
I'll be
eat
honest with you,
and
one
drink.
of the things that really pisses me off is the fact that when you look at pictures from the Vatican and the place is more or less covered in gold leaf here, there, and everywhere, or maybe even gold plated.
Maybe they're beaming themselves to somewhere else, Christian.
Why are they using that gold to help the poorer countries?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Now listen to this, right? The
Yeah,
Vatican's,
I'll give you 20 bars of gold to help your economy.
The Vatican's got like the biggest gold reserves apparently, like even more than the Rothschilds in their vault. So the thing is, you know, they're meant to be sort of like for helping like the poor people. Well, they could solve like world poverty overnight, Christian, couldn't they? It doesn't make sense.
It's all crazy. It's all of it's crazy. Christian has me written down as a detective, don't you, Christian?
Oh really? Well, I think we're all detectives.
You delve into so many very subjects that enlighten me in other areas, and has enlightened me in other areas. Like
that's my point, Christian.
Well, do you know Christian?
I just like putting information.
This has been. Sorry.
I just like to put the information out there. It's for you to think or research. I always say, do your own research.
This was one podcast.
This
was one podcast I was so looking forward to, and this is fascinated me today, mate. It really has. I've been saying to Karen, I can't wait to do it, like, you know, because I know your knowledge, like, on this gold and all that. And it was, but for me, I don't know, like, when other people see this, whether they're going to sort of like show the same fascination, because I think it's going to start there. Anyone in the true community going to start their brain thinking, oh, do you know something? Those three guys speaking there, they've got something there, you know.
One girl and two guys.
Yeah, well, yes, that's right. It's a figure of speech. But you see where I'm coming from, Christian? It's going to start their momentum going, thinking, do you know something? They've got something there. It's a shiny bit of metal. Why is it so important? Is there an ulterior motive to it?
Yeah, it makes me think, well, perhaps I should have got myself a gold chain like 50 years ago or even 40 years ago. You know, got myself a nice big hefty gold chain to wear around my neck. And when you begin to understand that all these people that are connected with the gold, like your rappers...
And they did like wearing them, and supposedly watches. Someone was telling me, like, you know, I was watching a video where, you know, the watches in your pockets, they were for other things, and they were on gold chains.
Yeah.
It does definitely make you think in a more critical manner than what I ever thought I could. But it wasn't until I started watching Michael Tellinger, and he started enlightening me about, this is 20-odd years ago, and where he said, well, we can all live in unity, you know, with free energy and all this, with Ubuntu and all that. So why are we at this point where even money is being used as a weapon these days, and it is being used as a weapon rather than what it's supposed to stand for, you know, as a majestic control system that praises people for the right amount of work, and that's not happening. Nowhere in the world is this happening.
No,
but you got nurses working their asses off, double shifts, and having to go to food banks, and you think, why? You know,
when there's all this gold, that's so valuable, but like I said, it's all relative, isn't it? You can't. Okay, it might make you better, like licking gold or grinding it down and taking it orally or whatever,
or putting a bar under your pillow.
But my point is, it's all relative, isn't it? They say like it's worth a lot of money, but worth a lot of money to who? Because if you're starving, it's to them, it's worth something more than they're not telling us, and that is why they want it.
I know, but Christian, I thought Christian, just check, because we're going to finish in a moment. But did you tell me that you think that gold comes from us?
Yeah.
Which we haven't touched on.
I think it does.
He thinks it comes from the dead bodies.
Now, can I ask you something? Do you think that they've got some alchemical process that can extract it from us?
It comes from our heart.
And of course they've obviously got this from Tartaria or whatever.
I also believe with the gold in our blood and our system, there's a connection with adrenochrome, right?
Right.
You know, when you go back through the centuries, oh, he's got a heart of gold.
Yeah, it's a saying, isn't it? Yeah.
What did they tear out of people in so many tribal cultures? They tore out the heart. And let's eat the heart because it will make us feel better. You know, it's like something that's symbolic throughout the ages, you know, and it's the very fact that when I thought about this many years ago, gold veins in the mountains, and then when you actually do the research and in some of these mines, it's like they are actually following veins that are in the human body, and I'm not kidding. That's the scary part of it.
I mean, you know, they put the truth in plain sight. You just said a couple of things there: a heart of gold and a gold vein. You know, they're telling you almost, aren't they?
That's what
Gold
Christian's
bladder.
been saying
Yeah.
to me. Yeah.
You know, it's
Well,
the
shall we cut? Because me and Christian have got to. Christian, sorry, me and Gary have got to go and do something. But do you want to come back? Maybe I don't know.
I want to do. I want to do.
Another one?
Listen. I'll be at home at the time, but I want to do a follow up to this, Christian. I'm going to do some
Maybe
more
you'll have
research.
to come back, Gary.
I'll have to come back because my Wi-Fi is rubbish. But this has been totally fascinating to me, mate. I've got to tell you, I'm absolutely buzzing from head to toe now. I'm gonna sort of like jump out the window and I think I'll fly. it's fascinating, mate.
I know good people, don't I?
Gary, when you look at a constant, right? And I mean a constant, right? You see the building process. There's always been a building process through our history, but the one constant, I can go back to King Midas. Everything he touched turned to gold. Solomon's mines, gold. Nimrod, gold. You know, it's Egypt, gold. It's prolific right throughout the ages of history and where records began.
And they couldn't wait to
right?
paint everything in gold leaf.
Yes, exactly. And people did used to eat via gold leaf. You know, so but it's only the very rich elite that ever got to
Right.
do it.
So that's like the colloidal silver thing.
so-
But listen, we've got
we've
to
got to finish
We're gonna.
very
This is
quickly.
the last
It's the last
bit
little
because
bit.
we have to go and do something. But so sorry, Chris.
Yeah, go on.
Do you want?
Well, all I want to say is like gold is as a precious metal, but it's all relative. Precious metal to what? It's like it doesn't make sense to me because I suppose it's because I'm Asperger's. It's like yes, it looks very nice and you make rings out of it, but for me, there's another reason behind it, and I think Christian's filled in the missing parts of my jigsaw puzzle. To be honest with you, that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much, mate. Absolutely top banana, mate. I loved it.
Do you want to come back and do another hangout?
Definitely. I'll come back here in a month's time or something. We'll do another hangout.
It's coming back for you now, Christian.
Because you got to look at the higher value. You've got the monotonic gold, and then you've got the platinum gold, and then you've got the palladium gold, and I can't remember what the next step up. I think there's 2 more steps up, and it's all about the white gold. That's the very important factor, the white gold.
Now, what's the difference between white gold and like the gold kind of thing, yellowy gold? I'm colourblind.
I think it's got something to do with the values and the density. And where it's come from. It might have to do with where it's come from in the body. You know, if it has come from the body, it's the prolific part of the body.
So the thing is, as we know,
What? Our hearts make white gold.
It's a great possibility. Yeah. Well, white
So
blood
what's all the other golds then? Animals.
It's a possibility. You know, I mean, the way you look at history, it's like they're telling us we're degrading. Yeah, as we evolve, we're degrading as humans. And when you look at technology, right, we've got all this smart technology, but our brains and our bodies are degrading through time. It's like we're thinning out, like a suit.
Oh, so if you take gold,
watered
maybe
down.
you wouldn't have dementia.
but another thing as well,
Exactly, you just said it. It's like dementia. We're getting younger and younger. I mean, I know somebody, one of my friends is 30 years old, got dementia. Come on.
Blimey, that's unreal. And of course, another thing as well, we know the elites like take adrenochrome and all that, which I don't like talking about because it almost brings me to tears. But of course, if what you're saying, if there's any truth in it whatsoever, Christian, that is why they want it because it's like part of us and part of our essence, isn't it? And they get the energy, they get their negative energy, they get the negative energy from it.
Well, we are just assuming that that's what they do. It could be for something else.
We're assuming. But there could be a variety of reasons. Usually it's not just one reason, but that could be one reason because it's got our essence in there. They're using that for their negative energy.
For someone else.
Or for someone else, yeah.
But anyway, any more to say, Christian? Because we're going to finish now.
No, I'm done, I think, for the day.
Did you enjoy that?
That's brilliant, yeah. I mean, we've got a lot more to say. I mean, it is exciting to find out the truth and the reality that when you establish that the one constant in life, right, is being gold all the way through. You go back through the ages and you just know there's more to it than just a piece of jewellery.
Exactly, 100%, no doubt about it. I mean, some people might disagree with us on that. Say, "Oh, I love my gold trinkets and one thing and another," but to me, it doesn't make sense because I look at things as their colour, and I can get something that looks like coloured gold, and for me, that's good enough because I like the colour of it. But you know, the metal's precious, but I think there's much more to it than that, and it's precious for them for another reason.
I think I'm a bit like you, Gary, when it comes to retrospect, that I prefer the value in a person in the now, you know, like you know that somebody's on the right wavelength.
Exactly.
And you know
Floss,
heart of
Floss
gold.
is here, the dog. Floss, what's the answer?
What's the answer, Flops? Woof, woof, woof.
We wouldn't understand it anyway,
Wouldn't
if she
understand
knew
it,
it.
yeah.
But animals know. Animals know.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
it's like you
she's
said,
sitting on Gary's lap getting cuddled, so Floss knows.
Yeah, she knows.
because you're giving up the right vibration.
Yeah,
Daddy
and
Floss.
that's strange, isn't it? Because dogs don't always go. I had a dog and it didn't go to certain people. You know, it's like they sensed that they was baddies, I suppose. I don't know.
Sometimes
this
she
is what I'm
drives
saying
me
about
up the
us now.
pole, but she always comes back to me. She's my dog.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah, mine, aren't you? You're a pain in the
she's
bottom.
a bit of a turncoat, Christian. She's been sleeping down with me like most of the time, but
And then halfway through the night, she comes up to me.
she disappears, but she's an half blinking snore.
Yeah, because I can't stand it.
She snores like a foghorn.
She's got a nose the size of a penny, and what comes out of that? So noisy.
Well, I'll tell you what, Christian. I hope like some of the people that watch Karen's channel like find it as fascinating as what I did. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but I certainly do because we've looked at different avenues about gold today, haven't we? Whereas look, people it might sort of like ring a bell with them and say,
Just
do you
as
know
long as
something?
they're not covered in gold or something, or they've taken
They might end
and
up
they're
hating
standing
us.
next to you and you can't see them because
Yeah.
they're
I
cloaked.
mean, I don't think there's many truthers out there because most of us are pretty poor, like. But I mean, there might be the odd truther that's a multi-millionaire, like that watches this and say, "Oh my gold, I'm going to give all my gold away now," and do something good for people.
One of the things that I've been doing is researching the elemental table, and funny enough, I was pointed in this direction 4 years
sorry,
ago.
if you think we've been mining it for thousands of years or hundreds of years, where's all the gold gone? Because very often, like I've bought like one of my
They've got it all.
engagements.
They're trying to get it all.
It was a Victorian ring, or just after Victoria. So this ring was well, it would have been like 120 years old. So, but why do we keep needing to mine it?
But if you hear what Christian said, even in lockdown,
Gary
like,
just said it. Gary just said it. Why do we need to keep mining it?
why do we keep?
That's the main point.
And
Why?
another thing as well, the value went up like in lockdown. It really weren't the most important thing, was it? If the other nonsense was true, we got to keep people alive. It's like they need the gold for something else because at that particular moment in time, for me, anything's valueless to me because if it can't keep me alive, it's valueless because we've got to keep people alive, haven't we? Why is it so important to have the gold? They should turn around and said, right, we're putting the gold on the back seat at the moment. We've got to keep people alive.
We're shutting down NASA, the gold mines, and all the things that are not important. But no, those are most important.
But you won't get people pick up on that, Christian, to say, well, actually, it wasn't really that important. The last year and a half of what's gone on, gold is the last thing we've got to worry about. We've got to keep people alive. But obviously, they have gold for an alternative reason. Now, when this goes out, like, we want people in the chat room.
Well, they don't want us to really have.
Well, I always say this. I say if you've got any ideas, put them in the chat room. And sometimes you miss on things.
But there is fool's gold. So is it a fool thing?
Well, they even tell you there a fool's. I know fool's gold is it's a poor man's gold, but maybe they're talking about that for the whole lot. We're the fools, and that's the gold, and we can't see it. We just think it's. It's
Gary just said it. We're the fools, but we know we're the gold. And when the people weren't allowed to go to their family funerals, I think that speaks volumes.
There you go.
But do you think?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Do you think though that it's because you said that it's happening in the heart? Do you really think that all these gold veins are just dead people?
It's a great possibility, and I'm sorry, but they are evil as evil gets.
They don't
From
say,
my
"Oh, we found
experience-
25,000 people buried here," though, do they? Is it our bones turned to gold?
No, the bones are left. They must have it out of everything else, all the tissue. If it does happen, it's out of the tissue. There might be some
But
kind of alchemical...
they never say, hey, we're mining this mine, and by the way, 25,000 people are buried here or something. It's never with people.
Now, but I know a lot of people are going to listen to this and say, like, because you do even get some people in the truth community turn around and say, oh, what a load of mumbo jumbo they've been talking about. But if you remember, it was only like about 40, 50 years ago that people still believe we landed on the moon. So, you know...
Let me just say this before we end, right? I want to say this before we go. Intellectualism or intelligence is taught. Wisdom you're born with. Yes,
you're born with wisdom. That's right.
You know, I couldn't put it any plainer than that.
Well, gold's not very important to me.
Well, like I said, I've got this gold ring. But I'll tell you what I'm going to start doing now, though, Christian. I've got this gold ring. I think it's 22 carat. Anytime I'm feeling a little bit Moby Dick like sick, I'm going to lick it and see if I get better.
Before I go, watching these two Australian guys for the last 5 years, that the older gold, I mean the very much older gold, vibrates at a different level, which is really weird. So the gold at that age was a more intense gold than what we have in more recent times. Like I'm talking Titan times.
Well, yeah, maybe because they've mined most of it. That's why.
Yeah, but
then where did the rest of it go?
If you had different generations, right? We're taught about the Titans. Now, I'm not sure whether the Titans came before the Olympians, because when you talk about Olympians, you're talking Zeus and philosophies, the giants of the first age. Now, we're taught that it was a Titan age, but what if there was the Olympians were bigger, right? And they were the original gods, like Odin, Thor, Loki, Zeus.
Yeah, but when they mine for the gold, they never say it's, oh, there's bodies in the gold.
No. I mean, everything is in plain sight. Yeah. Even today, what they do is subliminal. Yeah. It is subliminal. It's right in your face. In films, they're telling you. Because I believe there's a universal law. They have to at least show you the truth, and it's for you to decipher your discernment. Yeah?
They think it readjusts their karma. They think if they tell you that, like you know,
we still don't even know why we're here, where we are, and the whole thing.
We ain't got a clue why we're here or anything. I mean, the thing is, it's like I'll tell you what we'll do. They'll probably sat around a table and say, right at the beginning of this current thing, we'll have a guy like the first guy that's going to have the Jabberwocky. We'll call him William Shakespeare. Or we'll get a guy that's called William Shakespeare to see if anyone picks up on it. And, you know, I've told people, I've showed it to them, I want them to turn around and say, how bizarre is that? But some people don't, Christian, they just go, it just goes over their head. And it's like this. You got to use your own discernment.
I could say that you saw it, well, this is not coincidence, is it? You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's very bizarre how people miss the blinking obvious, and like with gold, you know, some people might think we're absolutely crazy, and they might be covered from head to toe in gold, and they have it for sort of like, I mean, it was not going to impress me, but it does impress some people, I suppose. They look at it and say, oh, look at that guy, like he's got all this bling on him and one thing and another. With me, it's just a shiny little bit. I mean, there are some advantages having Asperger's because it brings you back down to earth. It's a shiny bit of metal, you know, a bit of stainless steel. It does the same thing.
We've got to go.
Anyway, we're going to carry this on, folks, because I find it absolutely fascinating. I'll do some more research, and also watch some stuff that Christian's done, because I don't know about you guys, but we've done something today which I don't think any other truthers have done. Delve this deep into what is gold and what it's used for.
But we still don't quite know.
We don't know, but we're trying to dig into it. Now, if anyone's got any other ideas, you know, let us know, please.
Anyway,
okay.
Listen, Christian, don't go. We'll say goodbye for the hangout, and then we'll speak for a few minutes afterwards. But we're going now for the hangout. Gary?
Yeah.
And Christian.
I've got a proper kiss. There was no social distancing there, Christian.
Anyway, thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Christian. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Christian.
Been fantastic. Bye.
Yeah, fantastic. Bye.